At number 10 is Tigra, first appearing in her own Marvel comic book called The Cat in 1972. This superhero just doesn't get the spotlight very often. Considering she has been a member of the Avengers in the past, it would only make sense that she might appear more prominently in more recent issues, or even MCU movies. But sadly, her most recent appearance was in a supporting role in Avengers Academy between issues 1 and 39. Tigra's powers began as an experiment by Dr. Joanne Tumalo, who gave her powers attached to her costume, and in this form she was simply known as the Cat. But down the line is when she eventually mutated into Tigra, a human-tiger hybrid, through a mystical ritual. She was then bound to a race of humanoid cat people from the Middle Ages, which she could then transform into on command from her human form, using the cat's head amulet. She's a pretty cool hero, so I wonder why they haven't really brought her back in any big way. Maybe they found her too similar to DC's Catwoman, who knows. Next up at number 9 is Stingray, an oceanographer turned superhero who builds his suit in order to explore the depths of the ocean. He helps construct an underwater city covered by a glass dome, which he uses to try and grow food for mankind. He first appears in Tales to Astonish number 95 in June of 1967, so he's just on the cusp of the golden age. Just about. This guy is no doubt an older Marvel creation, and if you haven't heard of him, you may not be alone. Although he has appeared as recently as the Iron Man 2020 event, he still only appears briefly as a side character facing off against Captain Barracuda. But at least the writers of that issue probably had the same thought as me, that he deserves to come around again. Once again, my hunch is that he's just a little too similar to DC's Aquaman, which might keep Marvel from giving him any more spotlight than they already have in more modern issues. Although his buddy Namor the Submariner, looks like a carbon copy of Aquaman. But Namor appeared for the first time in Marvel's first ever comic book, Marvel Comics number 1 in 1939, whereas Aquaman didn't appear until 1941. But I digress. It just seems that DC found a way to occupy the underwater superhero market, which keeps us from seeing more characters like Stingray and even Namor more often. At number 8, we have DC's The Question, or just Question. Like Stingray, this superhero first appeared in 1967, but isn't showcased very much anymore. Usually teaming up with the Blue Beetle, this superhero got his last solo series in 1987, lasting 36 issues. He originally had the secret identity of Vic Sage, but was later reimagined in the 2006-2007 miniseries 52, and his protege, Renee Montoya, takes over the mantle. This character is just a good old-fashioned fighter, only really having abilities in martial arts and I guess sleuthing since he's a journalist by trade, but he's just got such a simple and cool film noir kind of look, and it would be cool to see him in a lead role again. Again though, his abilities and look are strikingly similar to Marvel's Chameleon, so maybe by holding back on popularizing this character too much, they're just avoiding butting heads with their competitors. Once again, it's hard to tell. Okay, at number 7, we've got Marvel's Dominic Fortune, or Dominic Fortunov. This character is not only old in terms of his first appearance in the comics, but the character himself is aged to the point where it's known to be one of his biggest weaknesses. First appearing in Marvel Preview number 2 in 1975, this superhero needs a comeback for the sole reason that he's just a guy. He doesn't have any powers, but fought in World War II and always seems to be getting caught up in assassination attempts and weird odd jobs. Like one time when he had to babysit 3 drunken actors in Hollywood for a weekend and had to call the cops on them after things got out of hand. And after that, Fortune actually gets recruited to the Avengers by Nick Fury in 1959. He's just a good old-fashioned human superhero who runs into human troubles and stays in his lane, but ends up getting the opportunity still to support the superpowered Avengers with bazooka blasts and covert ops. At number 6, we have DC's Dr. Fate. This guy is old. He first appeared in More Fun Comics number 55 in 1940 and basically hasn't been mentioned again since his death in the Book of Fate number 1 in 1997. So yes, that's a long run, but still I'd like to see more of him. Dr. Fate is a superhero that's got so much going on and looks so cool that I don't know why he isn't used more often these days. His powers come from an incident when he, Kent Nelson, and his father were uncovering the tomb of ancient immortal Nabu, and Kent is basically trained by the ancient being and awarded with the Amulet of Nabu, a cloak, and a helmet. With the training and these items in his control, he has abilities ranging from magic manipulation and flight to invisibility, super strength, and resurrection, among others. It's just a really cool character based on real ancient myth, and I don't see any reason why Dr. Fate shouldn't have another comeback soon.
Number 5. Earth 15513, 1872. Technically, Earth 15513 is Battleworld, which is actually part of the modern Secret Wars story. The pocket dimension of the Valley of Doom is made of another Earth's version of the Wild West, mainly the town of Timely. Timely is run by its mayor, Wilson Fisk, and his enforcers, who ultimately answer to Governor Roxxon. Stephen Rogers is the sheriff in this here town, and he's a bitter but just man after the death of his deputy, Bucky Barnes. Anthony Stark is the town drunk, regretful of how his weapons were used in the Civil War. Natasha Romanoff is the widow of Bucky, with Bruce Banner being the doctor of the town. The new hero, Red Wolf, tries blowing up the Roxxon Dam, which almost results in his lynching, if it weren't for Sheriff Stephen Rogers, who saves him. Conflict blossoms when the agents of Roxxon, Bullseye, Grizzly, Elektra, and Dr. Octopus arrive in town and start running amok. Another story you have to read. I promise the steampunk looking Iron Man will not disappoint you. Number 4, Earth 717, Captain America in the Civil War. The what if stories are so cool. In What If Captain America, Stephen Rogers actually fought in the American Civil War instead of World War II as General America. Given powers from an ancient Native American eagle that also turned an evil racist Bucky Barnes into the White Skull, who became the leader of a white supremacist group. Because of General America's involvement in the Civil War, the Union won the war a year earlier than it normally would have. Abraham Lincoln survived his second term in office. He helped rebuild the South, suppressed the rise of a certain group of hooded racists, and prevented the Indian Wars from ever happening. He would go on to fight the White Skull and his new, deadlier hate group, eventually being succeeded by a line of Captain Americas who were his descendants. Well, hey there, time traveler. You're from the time period where YouTube still lets you like and subscribe, right? Well, if you're enjoying this video right here, why don't you just go and hit that thumbs up? It sure helps us out a lot. Alrighty, let's get on to the top 3. Number 3, Earth 90214, Marvel Noir. In this alternate version of Earth, superheroes debuted in the 1920s and 30s instead of their normal timing. This Earth 90214 brought us Marvel Noir, with subsequent noir versions of Punisher, Wolverine, Iron Man, Daredevil, Luke Cage, the X-Men, and most famously, Spider-Man. Each story is a fresh, unique, and awesome take on each character, seeing how superpowers in this world are pretty much non-existent except for a few characters. For example, Spider-Man was bitten by a spider, but instead of being based in science, his powers derived from a spider god. Or Wolverine didn't actually have claws, he just carries like brass knuckle blade things. Another example would be the X-Men, who are actually a group of sociopathic criminals, led by an Xavier who believed sociopathy was the future of the human species, which is just incredible. Number 2, Earth 811, Days of Future Past. Earth 811 is a future timeline where Sentinels rule over North America. After their creation, almost all mutants have been hunted and exterminated. The mutants that were not killed are kept in concentration camps. Even the heroes who aren't mutants have been exterminated. The Avengers, the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Daredevil, they're all gone. But hey, this is the future, not the past. Yeah, I'm getting there, okay? Rachel Summers, the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers, uses her telepathic powers to send Kitty Pryde's mind back into her younger self's body. Specifically, Kitty's mind went all the way back to the Halloween of 1980, where she informed the X-Men of what their future could become, and they prevented the assassination of Robert Kelly. The story is a whole lot more complex than that, and is also one of the most prized Marvel stories, so give it a read! Number 1, Earth 311, Marvel 1602. Okay, Marvel 1602 is my absolute favorite Marvel alternate universe. Fun fact, it was the first Marvel writing escapade for superstar fantasy writer Neil Gaiman. The universe actually got its start in a different alternate reality, Earth 460, where Purple Man became president for life. Most heroes had been hunted down or had died from old age, but after Captain America is captured, he is banished away to Earth 616's 1599, shortly before Roanoke was formed, which inadvertently created Earth 311. For some reason, the presence of Captain America destabilized reality and began the emergence of heroes and villains into this world who are counterparts to many of the present-day heroes and villains of the Marvel Universe. Count Otto von Doom the Handsome, Witchbreed, which are mutants, Grand Inquisitor Enrique, which is Magneto, Carlos Javier, which is Charles Xavier, Four from the Fantastic, Sir Nicholas Fury, Peter Parquois, David Banner. The story is so interesting, intertwining actual history with superpowered beings. I highly recommend you give it a read if you haven't already. Number 10, 3099. Although this version of Captain America is not native to any comic books, being from the Marvel Future Fight game, he is still probably one of the sweetest looking Captain Americas we have ever seen, and he is from the future, so a win-win. This Cap is James Rogers, presumably an ancestor of Steve Rogers, and he wields a shield that seems to be made of pure energy that can do multiple different things. By watching some of his moves from the game, James can do all the normal Captain America things, but his shield can create a force field bubble around James. It is also able to duplicate itself and become multiple shields at once to attack multiple enemies and give James protection while other shields are bouncing around doing crazy stuff. The story reason for his existence is that in a fight between an Ultron under the control of Red Skull and modern day Captain America, Iron Man, and Black Widow, a portal to an alternate future dimension opens up, and the alternate 39 future versions of those three heroes come through and they fight against their originals. I don't really care what the excuse is for having them. All the versions of these 3099 heroes are totally awesome, even if only in their designs. Number 9, Sharon Rogers. Oh look, it's another Marvel Future Fight version of Cap. I'm sorry, I promise this is the last one, I promise. In an alternate universe where Captain America was never frozen in ice at the end of World War II, Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter celebrated V-Day with a private marriage ceremony and some alone time. After the couple's honeymoon, when Peggy was assigned to South Korea, the couple welcomed the birth of their daughter Sharon. Following in her heroic parents' footsteps, Sharon soon became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. herself and eventually took over the role of Captain America. Tony Stark presented her with awesome-looking heavy-duty but lightweight Starlight armor, alongside a new energy-absorbing shield and a new weapon, the Blaster Lance. She looks wild and totally awesome, and I'm assuming, based on her in-game stats, that she's on par with her father ability-wise, but with the obvious technological enhancements. Number 8, Kiyoshi Morales. When a group of 5 Captain Americas from different realities are brought together in Captain America Corps number 1 from 2011, we get a look at Kiyoshi Morales, the great-grandnephew of Luke Cage, and he is the 25th century's Commander A. Kiyoshi is a much more physically imposing character, standing at what looks like almost 7 feet tall, and he was definitely the most physically imposing Captain America among the Captain Americas gathered by Toph Key. Instead of a vibranium shield, Kiyoshi's suit can generate energy shields on each arm, which resemble the normal Captain America vibranium shield, kind of like Captain America 3099 from number 10. His suit is much more advanced as well, as you'd expect from the 25th century Captain America. For example, it features a neuro web, which allows him to tap into wireless systems and stored information. He had all the enhancements we'd expect from a Captain America, and he is just a super cool character who I really hope we get to see more of in the future. But for now, he is definitely my favorite of the Captain America Corps members. Number 7, Shannon Carter. Spider-Girl, May Parker's timeline, otherwise known as Earth 982, presented a brighter future for Marvel than the world of 2099 suggested. In the MC2, Sharon Carter's cousin, Shannon Carter, idolized Captain America as she grew up. Now as an adult, Shannon worked as a tour guide for the Avengers Mansion, but eventually she pushed herself to her physical limit, created miniature Captain America shield weapons, and she was invited to join the next generation of Avengers. Shannon took on the American Dream persona in tribute to Cap, but when she finally met and saved her idol, Steve was so impressed that he gave Shannon an indestructible shield too. So while she did have a different name, she was ultimately another version of Captain America, and an alternate future version too. She also kicked butt, so there's that. Number 6, Danielle Cage. On Earth 15061, Danielle Cage, the daughter of both Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, would eventually grow up to become the Captain America of her time. And let's think about this. The subsonic flight and superhuman longevity of her mother, with the bulletproof skin of her father, plus the superhuman strength, durability, stamina, speed, and healing factors of both of them? Yes, Danielle Cage doesn't just use the shield of Captain America, she is the shield, and she is an awesome Captain America. She arguably does not even need her shield, which is a controllable drone replica of the original. Unfortunately, we don't really get to see much of this version of Danielle Cage, but we know Danielle is a force to be reckoned with, and as such, she's a Captain America who deserves to be on this list.
At number 5, Future Man. How could I make a list about villains of the future without mentioning Future Man? In the far future of the year 1 million AD, the world's oceans have evaporated, leaving the human race on the brink of extinction. And so Future Man, whose real name is never revealed, volunteered to travel back in time to the 20th century with a plan to exterminate the human race in that era so that he and his people of the future could inhabit the present on an undisturbed Earth. And he attempts to accomplish this mission using some very Doofenshmirtz-esque gadgets and plans, including but not limited to plague-carrying bombs, a slow-motioninator, that's not a joke, a tsunami-inducing torpedo, a machine that resurrected ancient Egyptian mummies, attempting to literally set the USA on fire using an atomic match, and setting off neutronic bombs, just to name a few. Eventually, he was defeated when he was sent to the ancient past in a broken time machine, stranding him there with no way of returning. At number 4 is Walker Slogan. Now this next villain didn't originate in the pages of comic books. Instead, he was first introduced in the 2011 video game Spider-Man Edge of Time, a game I have very fond memories of. Well, except for the battle against the future Black Cat, because I was stuck on that boss for like a year. Don't judge me, okay? I was 9. Anyways, Walker is the head of the temporal physics lab at Alchemex in the year 2099. Now the timing of his research, culminating in the creation of his time gate, coincided with Alchemex's inevitable takeover by Stark Fujikawa. With nothing to lose, Walker used his time machine to book himself a one-way ticket to the year 1970, where he used his futuristic knowledge to start up Alchemex long before it was supposed to have even been established, completely altering his timeline and converting the Nueva York of 2099 into an unrecognizable dystopia. During this time, Walker was able to make a second time gateway, thus enabling two-way time travel, and he even managed to hire Peter Parker as an employee just to keep an eye on him, eventually having anti-Venom fitted with control chips in order to assassinate Spider-Man, a task he actually accomplished even despite the fact that Pete was warned ahead of time by Miguel O'Hara. But don't worry, Walker got what was coming to him when Miguel removed all of Anti-Venom's mind control chips, and in a blind rage knocked himself, Walker, and Dr. Octavius into the time gate all at the same time, fusing the three together and forming the monstrous atrocity residing within the time stream itself. At number 3 is Professor Zoom, otherwise known as Reverse Flash. I'm sure Barry Allen's arch nemesis needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. The sociopathic professor known as Eobard Thwain was born about 420 something years from now, a designer baby genetically engineered to be good looking and highly intelligent, as is the protocol for all humans in the future. Dang, now I know I was born too early. Now despite his intelligence, he was forced by his parents to dedicate all of his time to watching his little brother instead of focusing on academics, and so he was ultimately denied entry to the program that would allow him to legally study the Speed Force, something he does anyways, leading to his arrest by his own backstabbing brother. But you see, Thwain was obsessed with being perceived as a hero, and so, after his future self inevitably figured out a way to tap into the Speed Force, he went back in time to prevent his own brother from being born, and thus Thwain was able to focus completely on his studies, and eventually got himself admitted into the Flash Museum. But when the leading professor researching the Speed Force refused to share his findings, his future self once again had to go back and make some edits to the timeline, allowing him to be appointed as a professor of the Flash Museum. Now I'm sure you already see the pattern here. Thwain doesn't get what he wants, his future self does some history rewriting, and then the Thwain of the past takes another step in the direction he wants to go in. This happens a few more times, like when he clapped his parents to prevent them from shutting down the museum, or when he clapped his crush's fiancée and literally every man she's ever dated in an attempt to court her, and when that doesn't work, he gave up and just had his future self traumatize her as a child, rendering her mute and causing her to be institutionalized for the rest of her life. Now after finally tapping into the Speed Force, again thanks to his future self making it easy for him, he decided to take on the mantle and become the Flash of the 25th century, putting people in danger just so that he could play hero and save them. Now eventually he would end up resenting Barry Allen, but he realized that without Barry, he would have never known about the Speed Force's existence and gain access to its power. So instead of just eliminating the Flash, Zoom decided to make Barry's life a living hell while shattering countless timelines in the process. At number 2 is Nathaniel Richards. What if the smartest man alive was evil? Now while Reed Richards may not be, his half-brother's future descendant definitely is. Also known as Iron Lad, Immortus, Scarlet Centurion, Rima Tut, Mr. Griffin, Dr. Doom, the Beast, Kid Immortus, Saint Nathaniel, Iron Prince, He Who Remains, and finally Kang the Conqueror is the descendant to Reed Richards. And not only is he one of the most convoluted characters in comic book history on account of his many alternate timeline versions of himself, but he's also quite possibly the single greatest threat to the Marvel multiverse, simply on account of his genius level intellect, which matches that of Reed Richards, the smartest man of his time. Yeah, that's right, brains is literally all this guy has going for him. No superhuman powers necessary for multiversal domination. All he needed to do was invent time travel, and suddenly he could utilize any tool or being across time to aid in achieving his absolute conquest. At number 1, the Time Trapper. The mysterious nemesis to the Legion of Superheroes first appeared as the tyrannical warlord who exists at the end of time. Now, even though he hates the Legion so much, he's actually responsible for their creation after designing them to fight his enemy Mordu. Now, the Time Trapper is known for having set up the Iron Curtain of Time, a method which he employs to prevent time travelers from visiting the end of time and discovering his origins, which has led many to speculate his true identity. Brainiac 5 even theorized that the Time Trapper wasn't actually a person at all, but instead an entire sentient timeline rebelling against our own. Now, what distinguishes this entity from the rest of the contenders on this list is the Time Trapper's complete control over the flow of time. Not only is he able to create those aforementioned Iron Curtains as barriers to any would-be time travelers, but he can also accelerate the aging of anyone of his choosing, even turning some to bones or ashes. But perhaps his most impressive feat is how he's able to take individual slices of time and form independent pocket dimensions with them. But that's not even the impressive part. It was revealed that one of these pocket universes was pruned of all life save for that on Earth and Krypton, meaning that he had eliminated from his copy all kinds of supremely powerful forces such as the New Gods and the Guardians of the Universe, among many others. Now, time travel may be cool and all, but it seems like it only breeds chaos and destruction. So let's just stick to the present, shall we? Or better yet, how about we take a trip to the past and stop all these villains from ever existing in the first place? Now, that is a time traveling adventure I could get behind.
Number 10, Batman/Catwoman. In the future segment of 2020's Batman Catwoman, we see a gray-haired Selina Kyle driving up a sunny coast. Selina pulls up to a trailer park called Seabird Island where she heads into a trailer to meet with an old friend. And this old retiree is actually the Joker. The two discuss what happened with the Bat family and the Batman, who it's revealed passed away from cancer. This future Joker also seems to have made a family for himself, as weird as that is. He has pictures of his grandkids and talks about his son Nathan, with twin kids, as well as a daughter Bethany, who has 3 kids. After talking about Batman being gone, Joker gets emotional, saying it feels like the end of something. But with Batman gone, Selina reveals that she's come for Joker, finally, because Batman is no longer there to protect him. Which is a funny twist on things. Apparently Joker does something in Batman/Catwoman that leads to Batman and Catwoman being scarred for years afterwards. Selina has come to kill Joker at last, and old man Joker's response is seemingly a satisfied laugh. Classic. Number 9, Earth 2. Here, Joker is a wheelchair-bound old man in the future after all the main heroes had either passed away or retired. The Earth 2 Joker continued his personal battle against the original Batman successors, Robin and Huntress of this Earth. This Joker kept the war against Wayne going despite the fact that even most of the other villains have died of old age, like the Earth 2 Riddler and Two-Face. But it's hard to fight a war on your own from a wheelchair with failing health. So, he decided to recreate Two-Face by destroying the face of the current District Attorney of Gotham City, Harry Sims. Helena Wayne, Huntress, decided that the Joker just kinda had to go. So teaming up with Kara-El, Helena went out to directly take out the Joker at his base of operations. Joker attacked Helena with his Joy Buzzer, but it backfired against Kara-El's superhuman durability and electrocuted him instead. Technically, this Earth 2 Joker succeeded in getting the heroine to cross the line and kill him, even though she didn't really do it herself, and also she isn't Batman, so it's kind of a hollow victory for the villain. But hey, you did good, Grandpa Joker. Good job. Good. Number 8. Dark Knight Strikes Again. The Dark Knight Strikes Again is the long-awaited sequel to The Dark Knight Returns, and I'll be honest, Frank Miller's art and writing really kind of fell off for this one, just like a little bit. But it does give us a very strange and unique version of the Joker. The Joker in The Dark Knight Strikes Again is not the Joker we saw in The Dark Knight Returns. It's actually Dick Grayson, Batman's previous ward, who, it turns out, was fired by the Bats after he grew frustrated at the boy's ability or inability to do the job properly. I should also let you know that this Batman is kind of a huge jerk. Just a little bit. Robin is heartbroken by Batman's rejection and he kind of loses it. He teams up with the likes of Lex Luthor to undergo radical gene therapy that would give him superpowers. The procedure steals the final portion of Grayson's remaining sanity though, sending him on a murder spree in order to track down and get revenge on his old mentor. You can't help but feel just a little bit bad for Dick Grayson. This time working for Bruce mentally scarred him almost as much as the genetic surgery did. Number 7. Last Night on Earth. In Batman Last Night on Earth by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, Batman, or actually a clone of Batman created by Batman's own resurrection machine, goes out into a post-apocalyptic world completely rocked thanks to Lex Luthor. One of the first things that this new Batman finds, funnily enough, is a lantern with the head of the Joker somehow still alive inside and speaking. Kind of like in God of War when Kratos gets the head of Mimir that he just carries around on his hip. Batman takes this Joker lantern as a companion, and this talkative Joker keeps the Dark Knight company as he works to find a way to dethrone Omega, who is a villain that rules over the apocalyptic world using Darkseid's Omega effect. This Joker is strangely friendly and compassionate, and he is honestly a great cheerleader for Batman, which I don't think any of us expected to see. What we really didn't expect to see is that this disembodied head is even given a robotic body to become Batman's new Robin. What? And number 6, Batman Digital Justice. Okay, so this one is a little bit different. More than a little bit different, actually. Batman Digital Justice is an alternate future story where the Joker exists as a sentient computer virus and has become the first digital dictator, quote unquote. The virus has access to several weaponized computers and vehicles and uses them to create chaos and havoc in the future Gotham City. He also kind of looks like he's a Nintendo 64 character, which is really entertaining. He has corrupted the Gotham City police who worked with him against the new Batman. GCPD's James Gordon II, who found the Batsuit after Bruce Wayne left it for James's grandfather, the Commissioner Gordon. With the help of an Alfred droid and a Bruce Wayne computer program, this new Batman eventually defeats the Joker virus, but holy, this story is kind of weird. Just a little strange.
Number 5, Ultron 1. What if Ultron 1 is an episode in the animated What If series, where we got to reimagine what the world could have been like in the cinematic universe if Ultron had actually won his fight against the Avengers, merging with a body that would become Vision and pretty much decimating all life on Earth and beyond. Only a few survivors remain, and even they struggle to survive and save the day. The other question becomes, who exactly are they even saving the day for? Most of humanity at this point is pretty much gone. It's an awful future where even the Guardians of the Multiverse, later assembled, even struggle to actually straight up defeat Ultron, instead having to be satisfied with merely containing him. Which, I mean, good enough for now, but who knows, that Ultron could just be like busting out and come in and be like, hey, I'm back. I feel like that's gonna happen at some point. And if it doesn't, I'll be a little disappointed, to be honest. Number 4, Deceased. Deceased is DC's apocalyptic zombie-like world, but where instead of it being specifically a zombie outbreak, it's more of an outbreak of the anti-life equation. The anti-life equation affects all the heroes and villains it infects by causing them to basically lose control and be filled with rage. This is the reality where an anti-life infected Wonder Woman goes on a rampage and literally tears Vandal Savage in half. This is also the same reality where the tragic story of Batman and Alfred is actually reversed compared to the main continuity. Instead of Bruce outliving his father figure and his trusted butler Alfred, Alfred is actually the one who survives him. Also, Alfred is a badass in this reality. Alfred is a badass in all realities though, so facts. Number 3, Earth Z. Sometimes referred to as Earth Z, Earth 2149 is the reality where a zombified sentry first caused an outbreak to happen. The outbreak would not only threaten the general public of this whole universe, but also go on to infect many superpowered beings as well, both heroes and villains, and it would also kind of spill into other universes too. It's widely considered to be one of the darkest realities in all of comics. This is a reality where Black Panther, T'Challa, is slowly devoured by his former colleagues and friends. Freaks me out every time. Every time I think about it, I'm like, no! Where Spider-Man ends up eating both his dear Aunt May and beloved MJ. It's a really messed up and bleak reality, basically, and every time I go back to it, I'm almost immediately forced to recoil back from these issues and this world. That's just how gruesome it is. It's really intense. Number 2, Ruins. Oof. I cannot believe this one is not at the top of this list. Honestly though, it was a hard decision to make when it came down to these last few. Some might not think of Marvel's runes as a future as it is set in modern day sort of, but it's still an alternate reality that never came to pass in the main continuity based on the original world of Marvel, which actually, started technically back in the 60s, although that's kinda weird. So I think we can still consider runes like taking a glimpse through a dark crystal ball into an impossibly cruel potential future for our heroes and our villains. In this reality, superpowers are interpreted more literally, meaning that they are less blessings than curses that cause people great harm, with them becoming more monsters, prisoners, victims, or just like straight up villains than actual altruistic heroes most days. Number 1. Batman in Bethlehem. Batman in Bethlehem has to be one of the worst futures out there, but that is also part of what makes it so compelling and so interesting. In this reality, Damian Wayne takes up the cape and cowl, following in his father's footsteps, but after the death of Nightwing, who actually went on to become Batman before Damian did. Damian decides the best way to approach being Batman because of Nightwing's death is by doing things kind of his own way. In other words, he no longer holds himself back from killing. And more than that, in this reality, Damian also makes a deal with the devil to basically protect Gotham no matter what, offering his soul in exchange for immortality and superior healing powers, which allows him to act as Gotham's vengeance pretty much forever, or at least for as long as, Gotham lasts. Eventually, Gotham ends up confronting a zombie-like outbreak when most of its citizens become infected with Joker venom and the monster serum. Gotham would then end up quarantined before being nuked, wiping it off the face of the map, with Damian surviving the strike due to his immortality and healing factor that he had bargained for. Number 10. Chameleon. Chameleon made his first appearance in the very first issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. Although there are a lot of other famous supervillains that people think of when it comes to Peter Parker's gallery of famous and capable rogues, Chameleon was the first that Spider-Man would come up against. In this very first issue, Spider-Man attempted to join the Fantastic Four, who basically fight him due to the fact that they think he's some kind of villain for breaking into the Baxter building. Of course, Spider-Man was only attempting to do so to impress them so they would invite him to join their team. When they refused to accept him into the team, Spider-Man set on his own to fight crime, and Chameleon disguised himself as Spider-Man to protect his own identity while committing crimes himself, ruining Spidey's reputation and ensuing Peter to go up against Chameleon to put a stop to him. Number 9. Dr. Von Doom and his Doombots. Sounds like a cool band. Dr. Von Doom and his Doombots. We were first introduced to Dr. Doom as a supervillain in issue 5 of the first volume of the Fantastic Four. In his introductory issue, the famous and brilliant villain used his brains and gadgets to capture the Fantastic Four. He wanted them to help him capture Blackbeard's treasure by using a time travel machine that he had constructed to send them into the past. In the end, they tricked him with a chest full of chains, and the thing smashed Dr. Doom to bits, only to find out that the Doom that they were dealing with was actually a robotic copy. The actual Doom also ended up getting defeated as well, and the Fantastic Four got away. But this certainly wouldn't be the last that they would see of Doom, who would become their most iconic foe. Number 8. Miracle Man. What's up with all these original Fantastic Four rogues who kidnapped Invisible Woman, by the way, or Invisible Girl as she was known then? Apparently, kidnapping Sue was a classic villain move back in the day. Miracle Man was originally a stage magician who claimed that he was even more powerful than the Fantastic Four, who just so happened to be in his audience when he was performing. After that he proved this in his stage show, he decided that he should probably become a criminal. He was so talented and smart and obviously, I guess, selfish and villainous somewhat, if he decided to go that route as opposed to the heroic one, that he made the Fantastic Four think that a promotional statue for a film called The Monster of Mars had come to life. While the Fantastic Four were distracted dealing with that whole scenario, he pulled off a series of robberies. But don't worry, he was defeated. After, of course, he kidnapped the Invisible Girl. Like I said, that's a thing that people like to do back in the day. Number 7. Skrulls. That's right, Skrulls are some of the oldest villains around. Did you know that? I know, it's pretty surprising. Although they aren't exactly considered clean-cut villains anymore. They have even teamed up with Earth's mightiest heroes, the Avengers, before to help save the universe. Originally, however, the Skrulls appeared in Fantastic Four Volume 1 Issue 2, and were hell-bent on invading Earth. This was right after the FF team had been introduced, which was basically all that issue 1 was about, an origin story. The Skrulls knew that the FF were the main protectors of Earth, despite the fact that they'd sort of just started their superhero career, which is kinda weird. Anyways, they decided to impersonate the FF, commit a bunch of villainous deeds while impersonating them in order to frame them and have Earth's military capture and kill the Fantastic Four team, so that the Skrulls might then invade Earth with no one powerful enough to put a stop to them. Of course, this plan was foiled when the FF trapped the imposters, unmasked them as Skrulls, and ended up posing as those Skrulls to tell the Skrull leader that Earth's defenses were too powerful for the invasion to succeed, thus scaring them off. Basically, they defeated an entire Skrull invasion in that comic, so that's pretty impressive. The Skrulls that originally posed as the Fantastic Four members were forced to stay behind after the invasion left, because obviously the Fantastic Four was not going to let them go back up onto that ship. So they then decided to take the form of cows and continue to live on Earth in apparent peace. Peaceful cows. Apparently they'd rather be anything but Skrulls. So they said in the comic, which I thought, oh, that's kind of like rude. I'm sure there are Skrulls that really like being Skrulls. Ugh. Number 6. Dr. Sivana. If you've seen the film Shazam, you likely are familiar with Dr. Sivana, or if you're aware of the Captain Marvel / Shazam comics. He was one of the first villains that Shazam actually came up against and made his comic book debut in Whiz Comics issue number 2. His first master plot of villainy? To ransom radio waves. The 1940s, what a time. He asked for $50 million and if he wasn't paid, threatened to create radio silence everywhere. Because this was the 40s, of course, that was a really big deal. Although right now we'd probably be like, who listens to the radio? But also $50 million is an insane amount of money to ask for. I feel like if Dr. Sivana hadn't been so greedy, it might have worked out better for him. Because $50 million in the 1940s? Jeez! In the end, Billy Batson and his Captain Marvel form defeated Sivana by smashing his radio silencer tech, which was like this huge machine by the way, to smithereens. But as promised, the Doctor would return to battle Captain Marvel, or as he's known now, Shazam, again, becoming one of his mainstay villains. Number 5. Green Lantern. This comic was originally published by National Periodical Publications, who, as we know now, would later become one of the companies that would amalgamate into DC Comics. The series would run for 38 issues and would introduce the first Green Lantern, Alan Scott. One of my favorites to bring up because I get to talk about his weakness to wood. In this first issue, we would discover how Alan got his powers from both the Green Lantern ring and an actual Green Lantern, which was created by an old Chinese lamp maker from molten green space metal that had crashed to Earth via meteor. This original series really put the lantern in Green Lantern. It's not even a funny joke, it's just really bad. You're welcome. Number 4. Captain Marvel Adventures. Captain Marvel Adventures was the spin-off from Whiz Comics, an anthology series that featured the ever-popular Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel Adventures was the original series for the hero, produced by Fawcett Publications. Alright, let's get into the craziness of Fawcett, here we go. Fawcett would end up cancelling the series and all other superhero series eventually as a result of the lawsuit filed against them in regards to Captain Marvel's similarity to Superman, who had belonged to National Periodical Publications at the time the lawsuit was filed in the 1940s. Still, Captain Marvel Adventures would go on to have 150 issues before it was cancelled in the 1950s. National Periodical Publication would later evolve and merge into the famous comic book publisher that we know today as DC Comics. And as Fawcett was closing up shop, DC would end up picking up the rights for Captain Marvel, aka Billy Batson, in the 1970s. Captain Marvel under DC would eventually evolve to become Shazam, originally the name of the magician who gave Billy his powers in his origin story in Whiz Comics. Although later that magician would have a different name, have no name, all sorts of crazy stuff. The name change happened after Marvel Comics sued DC for rights to the name in regards to their own separate Captain Marvel, who first appeared in the Marvel Superhero series in 1967. Oh, comic book characters and lawsuits. Woo! I hope that clarified some of that crazy lawsuit stuff for you, or made it more confusing. Either way, I hope you learned something. Number 3. Captain America Comics. Captain America was one of the first Marvel heroes to get his own series. Captain America Comics was the original name of the series, and its first issue came out in March of 1941. Unsurprisingly, the cover features Cap punching Hitler in the face, pretty much establishing what kind of hero Steve Rogers would be from day one. The kind of guy that likes to punch Nazis in the face. That's his thing. That was his thing anyways. Then he got frozen in some ice, then he woke up, did some other stuff. You know how it goes. Number 2. Batman. After making his first appearance in the Detective Comics series in issue 27, Batman would shortly after get his own series and go on to be one of the most iconic heroes in comic book history, and obviously one of my favorites. The first issue of Batman came out in March of 1940. It featured an origin story and introduced us to Batman characters who would go on to become some of the most famous, including Robin, James Gordon, Joe Chill, Hugo Strange, Catwoman, and Batman's one true supervillain, the Joker. Number 1. Superman. Superman first appeared in the anthology series Action Comics, and like Batman, he would soon after get a series to call his own. Superman Volume 1 Issue 1 would come out in June of 1939, almost a full year before his future BFF and fellow JLA member Batman. Superman's first issue was the typical origin story fare, but as soon as issue 2, we would also find ourselves introduced to some of Superman's mainstays, mostly in the way of supporting characters. In issue 2, we would meet both Superman's young pal Jimmy Olsen and his future girlfriend slash wife slash baby mama Lois Lane. Slash sometimes she's superwoman herself. That's also happened. Oh, Lois Lane. She's a pretty cool lady.
Number 10. Avengers 1 million BC, Earth 616. Alright, look, I promise this is the only Earth 616 story I'm mentioning. But given the team and the story, how can I not? The Avengers of 1 million BC came together in the prehistoric era to face Zagreb the Aspirant, basically a mad celestial. The team was made up of Odin Bor's son, wielding Mjolnir, the mutant Firehair, the avatar of the Phoenix Force, the sorcerer Agamotto, like the Eye of Agamotto, that guy, Fan Fei the Iron Fist, the first ever Black Panther of the Panther Tribe, a mammoth riding Ghost Rider, and Starbrand. They first appeared in Marvel Legacy number 1 in 2017, and I'm not even going to explain the rest. Just go read it, please! Earth 76611, alternate history. In Fantastic Four Annual number 11 in 1976, Power Man knocked a vibranium cylinder into Mr. Fantastic's time platform, sending it back in time. The cylinder was split in two halves. The important to this topic half landed in occupied France in 1942 and created an alternate branching timeline, Earth 76611. In this alternate timeline, the socialist Germans used the vibranium to advance their war effort, successfully invading England in 1943 and even making it to Manhattan by 1944, taking over America by 1946. That's what half a cylinder of vibranium can do, apparently. The Fantastic Four realized what happened though, and through some confusing timefoolery, they managed to prevent this timeline from replacing the Earth 616 timeline. Number 8. Earth 9591, Ruins. This alternate reality is going to be the most recent one, taking place in the 90s. The timing of this one doesn't factor so much into its story though, as the more relevant detail is that this is the universe where literally everything goes wrong. The entire Fantastic Four, except Ben Grimm, who was replaced by Victor Von Doom, died on their test flight. The X-Men are held in a prison in Texas where they are horribly disfigured to stop them from using their powers. Peter Parker's spider bite caused an infectious rash that mutated his entire body and caused his hair to fall out. Bruce Banner becomes a monstrous mass of tumors. The Avengers all died in a rebellion. The Silver Surfer went mad, wanting to know what it was like to breathe air again. Nick Fury became a cannibal. All sort of that really lovely stuff, you know? I would not read this story unless you're okay with being upset, but I would read this story because it's good and it's interesting. Number 7. Earth 6799, 1967 Spider-Man cartoon. Bouncing off that happy little lovely tale, we have Earth 6799, or just Earth 67, which is actually the Earth where the 1967 Spider-Man takes place. Because of that, this Earth technically first appeared in Spider-Man Episode 1 Season 1 on September 9th, 1967. Its comic book appearance first comes in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, number 9, as one of the many alternate Spider-Man featured in this story. He also shows up in Spider-Verse Team-Up issue number 2 when Miles Morales and Peter Parker come to this Earth to find Spider-Man and recruit him to the fight against the Inheritors. It's super entertaining. Number 6. Earth 84243, Conan in the modern day's 70s. Some people may not know this, but Conan the Barbarian is actually part of Marvel Comics. And while the era he lived in, the Hyborian Age, is part of the 616 continuity, the What If story on Earth 79213 isn't. Instead of being in the Hyborian Age though, our boy Conan gets stuck in the 20th century. After visiting the Hyborian trade city of Akbitana, he is captured by a wizard who specializes in time travel. And instead of escaping, he is transported to Manhattan on July 13th, 1977. What does he decide to do with himself? Well, after scaring off some punks and throwing an old lady in a trash can, he has a romantic encounter with a modern age lady, Danette, who shows him the Guggenheim Museum, which reminds him of an ancient citadel, and they go to investigate. Here, he fights off some muggers and then gets struck by magical lightning that transports him back through time to his Hyborian age. But at least he got to keep Danette's cap as a reminder of their romance.
Okay, number 5, Marvel's Gargoyle. This superhero first appeared in Defenders issue number 94 in 1981, but since then he's actually retired and settled down in Greenwich Village. He even opened a restaurant called Isaac's Oysters. But he did go for one more rip for old time's sake, aiding Iron Man on a mission to take down the android Korvac. But that's sort of been it for him. And what's cool about this superhero is that he was sort of meant to be evil, but just chose good. He was formed when Isaac Christians agreed to place his soul inside a cursed gargoyle and do the bidding of the six-fingered hand. This was all in exchange for his issues to be resolved. But then when he was tasked with capturing Hellcat, a member of the Defenders, he couldn't get himself to do it and defied the six-finger hand and just sort of kept living on as this like possessed gargoyle who chose good. He kind of reminds me of Beast. He just has this super wholesome energy to him, and I just feel like he could do for more of that sweet, sweet limelight. At number 4, we have Zeta from Batman Beyond, and eventually the Zeta Project cartoon spin-off. The show ran from 2001 to 2002 as part of a spin-off to the Batman Beyond episode Zeta. This character is so wholesome and doesn't get enough attention, having been last seen 20 years ago in what would have been the final episode of the short-running series. This synthoid was built for the NSA to keep an eye on terrorist organizations, so his abilities are pretty extensive, being able to shapeshift into just about anyone to infiltrate and carry out covert ops with ease. He's a naive and friendly character who decides to go rogue after realizing that any one of his assassination targets could be innocent. Zeta had such a moment and clearly a huge approval rating since his one episode got him a whole series, but at a certain point, the world forgot about such a good and powerful synthoid superhero that definitely deserves a comeback. At number 3, there's Warlord, a character the world hasn't seen since his death in Warlord Volume 4, Issue 12. But there should be some kind of revival of Travis Morgan, who is another character on the list who doesn't actually have any powers, but is just a very well-respected and decorated war veteran. He also looks a lot like Oliver Queen or Green Arrow, which could have had something to do with it. They sort of acknowledge this when they finally meet in the same comic, and all of the Seattle underworld mistake Warlord for Green Arrow and attack him on sight. But whatever the reason is, Warlord's legacy deserves to be acknowledged with another appearance of some kind. I mean, the lore behind the character is that in past lives he's been Sir Lancelot, D'Artagnan of the Three Musketeers, and Crazy Horse among other legendary warriors and soldiers. He's just a great human character with, might I add, a really cool costume and some badass accolades to boot. Bring him back. Okay, at number 2 on the list we've got Komodo. This superhero really was a flash in the pan, only appearing on and off for a few years and having her legacy end with her powers being stripped for a time until they're restored again by Cloud9 and Hardball. But that's sort of it. And I think the last time she's been seen is in the Fear Itself storyline, which wrapped up in 2011, which is 11 years ago now, believe it or not. But this character needs to reappear in some way. The superhero was first created because Melody Kusama lost her leg in a serious car accident, and none other than Dr. Connors from, yes, the Spider-Man series, decides to endow her with the regenerative powers of a lizard. Well, not only that, of course, she actually turns into a lizard fully and at will and gains super strength, speed, agility, stamina, all that good stuff. I think this story is a good one to retell because who doesn't love a good story where someone confined to a wheelchair is able to not only walk again, but fight crime and be pretty damn good at it. Okay, last on the list is just my personal favorite, arguably obscure superhero 3D Man. An athlete turned superhero, 3D Man mysteriously gains superpowers after being stripped of his 3 Olympic gold medals. I mean, he was taking steroids, but there's always room for redemption, right? This character first appeared in 1998 and no one ever really talks about it. And to be honest, I didn't even know he existed until I started writing this list. And I want this hero to get more spotlight primarily because I'm a sucker for early 2000s culture, and this character is just such a great time capsule for that period, where everybody was obsessed with 3D for some reason, with DVDs coming with 3D glasses in the case, remember that? And 3D Man has the same nostalgic look to him, with many of his appearances being colored in green and red. If you want to look him up yourself, you'll notice that he originally went by the name of Triathlon and later changed to 3D Man during the Secret Invasion storyline. This guy just looks so cool and hits home with some good nostalgia for me, as well as probably anyone from the Gen Z or millennial generations. And there's also just a silly factor there too. 3D Man needs to come back. Please, can we? Just for 1 second. At number 10, we have Wonder Woman from the Kingdom Come storyline. In Kingdom Come, Diana has the same origin as the Wonder Woman we know, also serving in the Justice League alongside Superman and Batman. But in the future, Batman has retired and the world has become darker and unforgiving. Diana herself even loses sight of her moral values and becomes less ethical in her heroic practices. Due to this shift in her practice, she is then exiled from Paradise Island and forced to reform on her own. And as the story progresses, she is the one who regularly visits Superman in his Fortress of Solitude and convinces him to return to heroism to help the crisis in Kansas. If you don't know this storyline, the crisis that I refer to is the culmination of a relentless new generation of heroes getting into a dangerous conflict with the governments of the world. With Wonder Woman's approach to justice still coming off as a bit harsh, Superman is hesitant to work with her at first, but eventually they do much more than work together. They actually get married and have 5 kids. At number 9, we have Lois Lane from Superman/Wonder Woman, Whom Gods Destroy. In this Elseworlds tale, we see a world occupied by depicting what would happen if the Third Reich was never defeated during World War II. And the Nazi ideology even poisons the ranks of the superhero community, turning the original Diana, aka Wonder Woman, into a herself. But during a battle between the Greek pantheon and the Athena is sacrificed, which somehow endows an aging Lois Lane with powers, leading her to take on the mantle of Wonder Woman herself. While this is going on, Superman gets turned into a Minotaur, and regular Superman gets turned into a woman. Once again, I don't understand why or how this happens, but she then infiltrates the Great Hall of the Reich, while this new Lois Lane Wonder Woman takes down the brainwashed Wonder Woman and ties her up with her magic lasso. It's a strange story, but hey, a future version of Wonder Woman that's actually a superpowered Lois Lane fighting. That's pretty badass. At number 8, we have Diana from Immortal Wonder Woman as part of Future State. In the future, Diana hasn't aged due to her Amazonian physiology, and we witness her recounting the experiences of visiting an apparition of a long-dead Batman as well as an aged Superman. After watching Superman disappear into the sun during a battle with Darkseid, the sun explodes in front of her and she has to make a decision whether or not to give up and die there and then. But instead of giving in, she brings life to a new future and a new hope for future generations of superheroes. We're then teased with a short sequence showing what a future version of Wonder Woman could be, as Nubia seems to take on the mantle at the end of the 2-part series, but more on her later. At number 7 is the Wonder Woman from DC 1 Million. This is definitely the most futuristic version of the hero on this list, living in the 853rd century. She is a member of the Justice Legion Alpha and is actually made of marble, possessing enhanced intellect and even telepathy. First appearing in DC 1 Million number 1, this Wonder Woman is teleported to an unknown planet by a being named Telos, where she and a number of other heroes are faced with opposition in the form of Luthor bots, which take out many of the heroes. But she survives and is finally teleported once more to face off against the Crime Syndicate, where she is defeated by Superwoman. This is a pretty far-fetched and bizarre storyline, but hey, it's over 80,000 years in the future, so what else will we expect? At number 6, we have Wonder Woman, aka God of War, from Wonder Woman Future's End. This version of the hero is one of the most relentless but also tragic versions on the list. In the New 52, Future's End, we witness events taking place 35 years into the future when there is a massive takeover by an AI known as Brother Eye. The corpses of fallen superheroes are taken over by nanotechnology, including that of Wonder Woman, creating these spider-like mechanical monstrosities. And the Wonder Woman one might even qualify as a future version of Wonder Woman itself, although it is kind of just a lifeless robot parasite thing. Either way, to try and prevent this horrible future from taking place, Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond, has to go back in time and change the course of history. But in the new reality he creates is where, or rather when, we see this future version of Wonder Woman taking on the mantle of God of War. During a one-shot called Wonder Woman Future's End, Nemesis feels threatened by Diana and entraps her in a state of illusion of perpetual war, where she stays for some time. But when Superman drags her out of this illusion, she realizes that she'd prefer to use her powers for peace, and therefore becomes known as Peace instead of War. And this all comes before she's eventually, unfortunately, killed in battle with Brother Eye.
Number Number 5. Mutant X. The Captain America of Earth 1298, first appearing in Mutant X number 15 in 1999, was a mutant with no name who took on the role after Steve Rogers was brought to an end by a Sentinel attack. His past was unknown except for the fact that he was experimented on by the government due to having latent mutanacy. This captain wasn't exactly stable. He lacked control over his mutant powers, which resulted in him accidentally ending the lives of both the Six and most, if not all, of the Avengers. What were his powers though? This Cap was still given the Super Soldier Serum, which I'm assuming gave him all of the same powers as Steve Rogers, but his mutant abilities included the ability to increase his mass and strength, telepathy, force field generation, crazy energy-based powers, and near invulnerability. His abilities activating caused enough of a galactical upset that it woke the Beyonder, who was sleeping inside the planet's core. So yeah, he went rampaging and was a total psychological mess, but that doesn't change the fact that he was absolutely very powerful. Number 4. 2099 Captain America. First appearing in 2099 Manifest Destiny, this Captain America was frozen again after a war happened that ended the heroic age in his timeline. He was brought to Alchemax, and after being thawed out, he told Miguel O'Hara all about it. Now this Captain America was eventually given Thor's hammer Mjolnir to symbolize the beginning of a new world. That's right, it's an official Thor cap. Alongside Miguel O'Hara, Captain America assembled the various 29 heroes into a new team of Avengers and led them into a battle in space against the President Doom of 2099. Yes, he does look like a very 90s amalgamation of the two characters, but his power was nothing to scoff at. Neither was the inspiration he fired up in people's hearts. Definitely a fantastically powerful alternate future version of Captain America. Number 3. Another 2099 Cap. But wait, there's more! In Marvel 2099, Captain America was a female named Roberta Mendez, or this version of Captain America was. Roberta was a bit different from most other captains on this list. Instead of joining a government-sponsored research program, Roberta was forcefully given the Super Soldier Serum by her husband, Harry. She gained all the powers afforded to a super soldier, and she did indeed become a new Captain America, although she was under the control of the Alchemax Corporation, which is a massive science-based company in this future world. It kinda gets worse for Roberta, as she is actually completely unaware of her separate Captain America persona thanks to brainwashing. Luckily, she did actually eventually rebel against Alchemax and then legitimately became Captain America, taking on the ideals that made her predecessor, or predecessors, I guess, so much better. Number 2. Earth X. Captain America, in the not too distant alternate future of Earth X, was a bit more tragic. In this world, everyone was exposed to Terrigen mists, giving everyone powers and sort of denying the need for superheroes as much. On top of that, this Cap felt unworthy, as he had actually separated the Red Skull from his head using his shield in an act of vengeance, causing him to step down from the Avengers out of shame. There's reason to believe this likely led to all the Avengers except Vision being defeated by Absorbing Man. So this Cap was a faded version of what he could have been, but he still had all the same powers and abilities and still fought against what was wrong and stood for what was right. He helped defeat an evil telepathic kid called the Skull and helped Mar-Vell create a paradise for deceased heroes. Although he did pass away, this Cap turned into one of Mar-Vell's avenging hosts, which were basically angels in the realm of the dead. He became an avenging angel, which is like a title I kind of hope to possess one day, but I probably won't. But his wings enabled him to fly. He could change his shape, but usually just looked like his usual self. He was able to travel between the dimensions of the land of the dead to paradise, and from paradise to the antimatter sun of the negative zone. On top of that, Cap could also awaken the latent memories of those in the realm of the dead with a single touch. He also wielded this extremely cool sword, but we don't really know what its capabilities are. So he is a much different Captain America with an extremely unique set of powers and abilities, but he's also one of the coolest. Number 1. James Newman. In 2007's Marvel Knights Captain America: The Chosen, Steve Rogers' Super Soldier Serum wore out after all the powerful and intense wars and battles he had been involved in over his unnaturally long life. He returned to his true self and became immortal again, growing old. Now Rogers volunteered to use an experimental machine that would let him project his image remotely onto battlefields around the world as an inspirational figure to give soldiers hope and courage. And it did just that for the central hero of this comic. James Newman. He was inspired to do incredibly heroic and courageous stuff, even if he felt like he was kind of losing himself. After Steve Rogers' actual death, Steve's spirit possessed James during an incredibly intense firefight and fought in battles for as long as his country needed him, saying that his spirit was inside anyone who needed him. This one's a bit more idealistic, but it does perfectly represent Captain America and his ideals.
Number 10. Helena Wayne as Huntress. Before Helena Bertinelli was Huntress, we had Helena Wayne. Helena Wayne was the daughter of Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, Batman and Catwoman respectively. Although she didn't come from a crime family, she was still heavily trained by her parents, and eventually took up the mantle Huntress as a vigilante. Like the main continuity Huntress, she was also known for being more violent than was considered acceptable. After her mother's death, she moved out, and blaming the criminal Silky Cernak for her mother's death, as he had blackmailed Selina into returning to a life of crime as Catwoman, Helena Wayne set out for revenge. Catwoman died when she returned to her life of crime. No. Mom, why? Number 9. Venom. Venom would technically make its first appearance in issue 252 of volume 1 of the Amazing Spider-Man series, but it wouldn't be until almost 50 issues later in issue 299 that the suit would develop a mind of its own, or well, bind its own mind with that of Eddie Brock's mind, and be introduced to us again as Venom. Once Eddie had got his hands on the suit, he began to plot sweet revenge on Peter Parker. But during his first appearance, Peter, who was also rocking a black and white suit at the time, albeit not the symbiotic one, I know, confusing, was not at home, so instead Venom ran into MJ in her and Peter's apartment, scaring her senseless. Eddie would go on to terrorize Peter, but the two would at times reluctantly team up to take on even bigger bads, as despite being kind of a bad guy, Eddie had sort of a moral code. He definitely didn't like to kill innocent civilians and tried to avoid that when possible, though also he sometimes did that. The two teamed up to take on villains like Carnage, and eventually Eddie would become a hero in his own right. He's probably got one of the best story arcs in comics because of his gradual transformation since introduction as Venom in '88, from complete villain to, well, complete anti-hero. Maybe even like full-on hero now. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is Venom a full hero yet? Can we go there? Number 8. John Constantine. Constantine made his first appearance in Swamp Thing Volume 2, Issue 37. He is known as an occult detective from England who likes to do things his own way. He's somewhat violent and reckless, with somewhat of a disregard for the smaller things. To John, sometimes you have to break a few eggs or sacrifice a few souls to make an omelet. And as long as it's for the greater good, he's sometimes fine with that. In his own series Hellblazer, which started in 1988 and ran for over 300 issues, the original tone of the series was quite dark, because the series also came out as part of DC's Vertigo line, which was known for being one of the darkest imprints that DC ever had. Of course, sadly, Vertigo is no more, but in its place we now have the stunning DC Black Label, so I guess it's fine. Just kidding. DC Black Label's really awesome. But still, can't we have both? Can't we have both DC? Number 7. V. V comes to us from Alan Moore and David Lloyd's series V for Vendetta. He's a mysterious character who is also known as Patient Number 5, who's said to be one of the many victims of abuse in a resettlement camp run by the fascist and villainous Norsefire-ruled government. It is believed that V was a test subject at the camp who escaped. He then adopted the mantle V and began to work on building an anarchistic uprising to topple the oppressive regime. His methods were meant to appear morally ambiguous so that readers could decide how to see him, as a hero or as a madman. V made his first appearance in the series Warrior in issue number 1. Also, if you haven't checked out that little story that he's in Warrior, V for Vendetta, it's really great. Just saying. Also, the series is great. Number 6. Black Cat. Black Cat was first introduced in The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, Issue 194 as a thief, and she continued to be that for quite a while. But she was also introduced as a love interest for Spider-Man at the same time, which she would also continue to be for some time. Distracting Spidey with a kiss, she was able to get away with the goods she needed and succeeded in breaking her dad out of jail as a result. Though we wouldn't learn her dad's connection to her until the next issue. Being a mysterious figure with self-serving motives has always left her painted as an anti-hero, even when she has heroic intentions at heart. Although Felicia Hardy has played both sides before as well, being a full-on hero and a full-on criminal at times. Number 5. Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. You might be wondering just where Wonder Woman is on this list, but Sheena actually predates Wonder Woman, and her own self-titled series even predates Wonder Woman's by a few months. She was originally published by Fiction Comics and was known as Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. Most 1930s Queen of the Jungle I have ever seen, but yet. Sheena's abilities included super strength and agility, and the ability to communicate with animals. She made her first appearance in WAG Comics issue number 1, and her self-titled series came out in early 1942, just a few months before Wonder Woman's. Only a few months, so close, so close! Number 4. Kazar. Kazar is known as being one of the first Marvel superheroes. Can you guess who the other one is? Let me know in the comments. But there are actually 2 Kazars. The one I'm referring to here is David Rand. He appeared in Marvel before they were even known as Marvel, back when they were Timely Comics in 1936. Kazar shared many similarities with Tarzan and was very passionate about protecting the surrounding wildlife and animals where he grew up. He also fought against Germany with the Allies in World War II, fun fact. In fact, the last story we have of him shows him setting out to provide more wartime aid. The other Kazar we would meet later in the 60s was known as Kevin Reginald, and was the son of the man who discovered Savage Land. Both Kazars also appear to be English. They had an English heritage anyways. Interesting. Number 3. The Phantom. The Phantom originated in comic strip form, where so many superheroes were originally born. He was created by Lee Falk. The Phantom actually introduced the idea of a costumed adventurer to American comic books. Before that, we didn't really have people in like tight spandex running around. While the Phantom, aka Kit Walker, found popularity in comic strips in the US, his comics didn't quite shine so bright. Internationally, however, the character seemed to do much better, becoming a hit in Australia, Sweden, and Papua New Guinea. He also was originally from a fictional country in Africa, so no wonder he did well in Papua New Guinea. I feel like they were like, I can see some similarities here. Number 2. Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers first appeared in a comic strip. He is a hero who comes from a world of sci-fi set in the future of the 2400s. 24,000s? 2400s, yeah, 2400s. Depending on what medium or comic you're reading, the last 2 digits of that year are also apt to change for his story. He made his comic strip debut as Buck, but the character was originally named Anthony Rogers in the novel that inspired the comics, Armageddon 2419 AD, written by Philip Francis Nolan. The story follows the adventures of a young man who is frozen for almost 500 years in suspended animation before waking up in the future and rediscovering the world he once knew, in a time that he is less familiar with. Honestly, if you aren't aware of Buck Rogers, but you are a fan of cosmic superheroes or sci-fi and weird space adventures, I highly recommend you check this classic out. Also, if you just like some time travel-y stuff. Who doesn't like time travel-y stuff? Everyone is like me, I hate it, but there's a few of us I know that like it. Number 1. Spring-Heeled Jack. Spring-Heeled Jack was originally a character in English folklore and urban legends. His being was reportedly cited all over Great Britain in the 1830s, and the stories involving him inspired writers to use him as a character in both a play and in Penny Dreadful novels, which were short serials, the original comic books really of the time. He has since seen other comic book series dedicated to him as time has progressed. Spring-Heeled Jack was originally described as a gentlemanly looking demon, and later described as looking like the devil himself, complete with horns. He was often known for breathing fire. Whoa, scary stuff. While his character was originally posed as a villain, he later developed into a misunderstood hero, a nobleman who sought to steal from the rich and give to the poor, complete with his own gadgets to help him perform his noble feats. Kinda like Robin Hood meets Batman. That's kinda what he was doing. Meets a guy that looks like a demon. Just combine all those, you got Spring-Heeled Jack.
And for this list, starting off at number 10 is Magneto. Starting off this list with the absolute GOAT. Magneto has been around for a long time, and a majority of that time, he was a villain, or at best, an anti-hero. As the number 1 rival of Professor Charles Xavier, Magneto's view of the world is pretty interesting given that he was the child of a Jewish family during World War II, and yet, after years of persecution for being a mutant, he believed his race to be superior to regular humans nonetheless, and that humans should be subservient or destroyed. Under this mentality, he led the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants as well as other groups against the X-Men and the Earth's heroes. Now everybody knows that Magneto is not someone you mess with. He has enough power and enough experience to stomp almost anyone. For example, while he has become more of just a hero nowadays, there's a point where he gets his heart ripped out by a villain called Villainous. But he keeps himself alive by using his powers to keep his blood flowing. He's just that insanely powerful. But being born around World War II and the rival to Charles Xavier, he's been up there in the age department since he was introduced, but always manages to decimate his enemies. Number 9. Cassandra Nova. Sticking with X-related heroes, we have the evil twin, or counterpart, or anti-self to Charles Xavier. Cassandra Nova isn't really a mutant, but she isn't really a person either. She is actually what is known as a Mumadrai, the spirit that is equal to the opposite of a person. Wrap your head around that one. This is about to get wild, so buckle up. Because of the genetic mutant potential of Charles Xavier, his Mumadrai was able to create a physical form for itself when Sharon Xavier was pregnant with Charles, making Cassandra basically Xavier's twin. Now Charles, even as a baby, sensed Cassandra as an evil presence, and he used his psychic abilities to try and take her out in the womb. Cassandra survived though, and so she spent decades as this terrifying mass of cells in a sewer, building herself a new body and planning her revenge on her brother. Cassandra has all the same telepathic powers as Charles himself, plus some telekinetic abilities as well. But being a Mumadrai, she has the terrifying ability to manipulate DNA, breaking it down, copying it, and being able to construct physical bodies. She can even phase through solid objects, regenerate insanely fast, and enhance and evolve other mutant abilities. Number 8. Granny Goodness. Stepping away from Marvel for a moment, Granny Goodness is probably the complete opposite of anything we would describe as goodness. She was originally one of the lowlies, which is basically the peasant class on DC Universe's Apocalypse. From a younger age, she was taken by Darkseid and raised and trained to become head of the Shock Troops and the Female Furies. She has the responsibility to bring young warriors from other worlds to fight each other to earn the right to be trained by her. But Granny Goodness also has multiple orphanages where she both trains and disciplines younger individuals looking for potential warriors for Darkseid. Now, being a resident of Apocalypse, Granny here does have quite a bit of power. She has superhuman strength, speed, durability, and senses, as well as invulnerability and an advanced immune system and immortality. But being immortal doesn't necessarily save you from looking old as hell, which is why we get Granny Goodness. Number 7. Horticulture. You know, sometimes a group of villains comes along that just kind of makes me smile. And Horticulture, who first appeared in X-Men Volume 5, Number 3 in December 2019, are one such group. Horticulture is described on their wiki as a group of agrochemists, biotechnologists, and eugenic engineers who specialize in the genetic manipulation and propagation of all things botanical. So, to me and my tiny brain, I take that information and translate it to, it's a bunch of old plant scientist ladies. Because that's what they are. It's a bunch of older ladies who are seeking to radically depopulate humans from the earth in order to bring the earth and nature to a state of balance. With the climate the way it is right now, it's actually kind of an understandable cause, even if it's utterly insane. Using their know-how, they made biological modifications to themselves, like resistance to telepathy and extended lifespans, but they also developed technology to manipulate their environment, inhibit mutant powers, and generate illusions on men. But they also have experience as computer programmers, being able to access the Krakoan gateways and trade information with the villainous anti-mutant group known as Orcus. Number 6. Old Loki from the MCU. Alright, I'm going to step away from the pages of comic books altogether here. During the MCU's Loki show, Loki gets sent to the Void, where the whole place is basically filled with other alternate versions of himself. But he specifically became part of a group of 4 other Lokis: Boastful Loki, Alligator Loki, Kid Loki, and the topic for today, Classic Loki. Classic Loki had a similar story to regular Loki from the Sacred Timeline, but when confronted by Thanos in Avengers Infinity War, this Loki decided to use duplication magic to survive the whole thing. He then spent a hell of a long time on a remote planet, ashamed of the nefarious things he had done over time. When he finally tried to return to see his brother, Thor, who he missed, he was an older man, and them meeting caused a divergent timeline, getting himself pruned and sent to the Void. He he has probably one of the best moments in the show. When Sylvie, Loki, and Mobius try to escape from the void, and the reality-consuming Alioth tries to stop them, classic Loki uses his magic to create a true-to-life, massive illusion of Asgard itself, all while this weird version of Ride of the Valkyries was playing in the background, distracting Alioth and giving me just straight up goosebumps. Like, I am actually getting them right now just thinking about it. Like, it was such a cool moment. Satisfying.
Number 5. Punisher. Probably one of the most iconic when it comes to the idea of what an anti-hero is. Frank Castle was also one of the first. It's likely because of him as well that the idea of seeking revenge became a somewhat dark one. The Punisher's main quest is to get vengeance, not just for himself, but for others whom he thinks deserve it. Originally, he turned to a life of vigilantism after the death of his family, who happened to be on a picnic at the wrong place, the wrong time, and were witnesses to something they shouldn't have been. As such, they were eliminated by the mob. Despite also being shot, Frank survived the attack, though the rest of his family died, and as a result, he swore revenge. He is also known for being an overly violent hero who fights with guns, which is something most heroes look down upon, preferring to use non-lethal force. The Punisher would achieve next-level anti-hero status when he also became the first anti-hero to kill the entire Marvel Universe in 1995, in Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe, paving the way for another popular anti-hero, Deadpool, to also do so years later. Of course, it would take Deadpool until the 2000s before that would even be a thing for him. The 2010s, as it were, actually. Number 4. Wolverine. Logan, being considered a little more rough around the edges and animalistic, is what quickly granted him an anti-hero status. As far as superheroes go, he was different. He made his first full appearance in The Incredible Hulk Volume 1, Issue 181. Since the beginning, his violent nature and broodiness has made him both well-loved by fans, but sometimes disliked by other heroes. He also has less hang-ups when it comes to killing people, even suggesting at times that it's the best course of action when dealing with villains, and having a pretty big thing for mercy killing when it comes to other heroes. This has also made Logan one of the biggest anti-heroes in the X-Men world. He just kills tons of people. People will be like, I think I'm gonna die, and he's like, I got you, don't worry. I'll make it quick. Number 3. Magneto. Magneto has been known as the foil to X-Men's Professor Xavier for years. Xavier was also the leader of the X-Men, while Magneto was the leader of the first Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, who were often the X-Men's enemies. Still, Magneto does what he does often to make the life of mutants better, albeit through punishing humanity, which, you know, not so great. And while he has spent a lot of time being a villain, over the years he has definitely shifted more to anti-hero, especially in the new Dawn of X mutant relaunch, where he often works alongside Charles. Although Charles is always like, calm down, man. And he's like, no! I will slightly overreact, because I'm Magneto, and that's what I do. Number 2. Catwoman. Catwoman has always operated more on the edge of what's right and wrong since her introduction, which is part of the huge appeal when it comes to her, and has been part of a huge problem in regards to her on and off again relationship with Batman. Though Batman wasn't really a saint either when it came to his early days, but anyways. When Catwoman first appeared in Batman Volume 1, Issue Number 1, it was as a jewel thief, and Batman at the time was engaged to a woman named Julie. Still, he was tempted to join her and become her king of crime, but when he refused her, she managed to escape his clutches, sneaking away. Batman really hoped that he'd run into her again, despite her criminal tendencies, and despite the fact that he was engaged, and his wish would eventually be granted. Catwoman would even team up with Batman and join him in his acts of heroism, though originally it would often be for her own motives alone, but she became more of a hero as time went on. Number 1. Namor. Namor is an interesting one. When he first debuted in Motion Picture Funnies Weekly, it was as a young prince attacking land dwellers, seeking revenge for his people. He would then go on to join the fight in World War II, fighting against Nazis with heroes such as Captain America. Later, he would forget who he was and only regain his memories when he was accidentally knocked into the ocean in the original Fantastic Four series by Johnny Storm. He would then rediscover who he was, and that the kingdom that had been his underwater home had been destroyed by the Humans War's nuclear bomb tests, and as a result would attack the land, becoming a villain. Again. Since then, he has done a variety of good and not always so good things, but what remains constant is that Namor's methods have pretty much always been questionable. His return to being good, but in his own way, and still while thinking very highly of himself, made him an anti-hero. And while he is very passionate about protecting his people, there is no doubt that this means he would also do anything to safeguard Atlantis, regardless of how morally ambiguous or severe it might be. Number 10. Future State. In the Future State reality, we saw the DC DC universe get pretty bleak. This was a world where Bruce Wayne's Batman was initially presumed dead, while Gotham had become a police state city, where all masks, heroes, and villains were outlawed, where the Justice League was only really a team of co-workers, no longer a group of close friends, never mind a family, where the Flash family was shattered, and where the Teen Titans Academy was destroyed, and the world became an apocalyptic wasteland thanks to the threat of the Four Horsemen. In all its bleakness, there were some bright moments and spots, but it seemed the farther into this future that we went, the darker things got. What makes a future scary? What superheroes do you think have the worst luck with awful and terrifying futures? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Number 9. Last Night on Earth. Last Night on Earth is a bizarre and wonderful story that features a post-apocalyptic wasteland where Batman, or a clone version of Bruce Wayne, wanders Gotham, laid to waste by nuclear warfare thanks to a mysterious villain known only as Omega. This version of Batman is also joined on his journey by none other than his longtime nemesis, the Joker, who is reduced to being a head in a jar, having previously been dismembered by Alfred himself. Joker and Batman go on all sorts of weird adventures, including one where they fight against giant-sized babies, which were actually light constructs created by those who now had taken and wielded the Green Lantern's rings, but who obviously, weren't really chosen to do so. I mean, I feel like if you're making giant babies to fight someone, it probably shouldn't have been a Green Lantern. In my mind. I mean, I guess it's creative. Gotta give them that. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, please check out our newest channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. Number 8. Age of Apocalypse. What would the world be like if Apocalypse succeeded in conquering it? Well, as you may have expected, it would not be great. While Apocalypse, currently in the comics, is not seeking to dominate and rule the world, but is actually focusing on his family, currently kind of in retirement, we should maybe just be grateful for that. Even though, honestly, right now, I think the mutants could actually use his help. Back in the days when Apocalypse was known as one of the most terrifying mutant villains around, we got to explore and imagine a world known as Age of Apocalypse. This alternate Earth, known as Earth 295, is one where Professor Charles Xavier was accidentally killed by his own time-traveling son, Legion, which resulted in a divergence from the main timeline. Because Charles wasn't around to form his own X-Men team when Apocalypse came, the world fell. Here, Magneto instead leads his own mutant team, acting as one of the last to stand against Apocalypse. But unfortunately, it's not enough to save this reality from being a horrifying terror show, where many of our favorite heroes end up pulled over to Apocalypse's side of the conflict. Number 7. Earth 3. Earth 3 is the reality that belongs to the Reverse Justice League. Not the Bizarro version, but the Crime Syndicate. They are basically an evil version of the Justice League we know and love from the main continuity. But instead of being a one-for-one of every character on the team, each member actually has their own more evil counterpart. Not necessarily being an alternate version of them, but in some cases they are. Wonder Woman is replaced by Lois Lane as a manipulative and evil superwoman. Batman is replaced by his older alternate sibling, Thomas Jr., who killed both his parents and the younger Bruce, as Owlman. And Kal-El, I think we still say it Kal-El, is the last vengeful son of Krypton known as Ultraman, but his Kal-El is spelt with just 2 L's instead of E-L. And that's only some of the impressively villainous roster who basically all rule Earth, using fear to motivate the people to do as they say. At least in the original Crime Syndicate. It's different people now. Not all of them are still there. Times change, and when you're evil, people are gonna usurp you and you'll probably end up dying at some point. That's just how it goes. Number 6. Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past is a mutant-based horror future where all mutants basically end up persecuted and held in camps where they're marked with M tattoos and forced to live out their days. This was a future reality that was avoided in terms of it becoming the main reality future when Rachel Summers in the comics sends Wolverine back in time to stop it from happening. Rachel herself happens to be from a version of the Days of Future Past reality, the main one known as Earth 811, of which now there are actually more than one version of that even alternate reality, just to really confuse you. An alternate version of the Days of Future Past reality, known as Earth 1191, is also the one that Lucas Bishop hails from, where Layla Miller also gets captured and marked with her own M tattoo, which she still has over her eye to this day, from her journey there with Jamie Madrox, during the X-Men Second Coming crossover event.
Number 5. Nosferatu. In the cyberpunk/expressionistic future of the super creepy Batman Nosferatu, the Joker is responsible for the creation of Batman and not the other way around. This version of the Joker is called the Laughing Man, and he is an utterly terrifying skeleton-looking cyborg assassin created by Jeremiah Arkham to tell the future. The look of the comics are in general inspired from early German Impressionist cinema, including movies such as Nosferatu and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And both the Laughing Man and the Batman he ultimately faces really lean full force into those absolutely terrifying styles. The Laughing Man has a knack for telling people when they are going to die and then de-lifing them to make sure that his predictions are true, which is kind of a backwards way of doing that. And they aren't gentle slayings either, as we see him kill this universe's Dick Grayson by completely severing his head from his spine and just having a great time doing it too, which is terrifying. It's quite terrifying, but if Batman and Nosferatu are your thing, you're welcome, I guess. Number 4, Dark Judge. A crossover between DC Comics and 2000 AD, the creators of Judge Dredd, led to the creation of Dark Judge Joker. A character who lets us know what it would be like if the Joker and Judge Dredd had a baby. The answer is that it would be absolutely terrifying. As a Dark Judge, he gained large glam rock style armor, and his hair went white with a red streak to make him appropriately very cool. Joker is one of the two main antagonists in Die Laughing. The Joker finds a way to transport to Judge Dredd's Mega City 1, and he unleashes a quartet of Dark Judges. And he even gains some immortality, becomes a new Dark Judge, and gains some deadly new powers. Judge Anderson, a telepathic ally of the Judge Dredd, teleports to Batman for help and to learn about the Joker. Batman then travels back with her to Mega City 1 to foil the Joker's plans. But the Joker just gets bored of Mega City 1 and decides to return to Gotham City, losing his powers and being sent back to Arkham Asylum. He basically just kind of gave up. Number 3, Batman Beyond. In the distant future where Bruce Wayne is retired and training the new Batman, Terry McGinnis, we see a remnant of the Rogues and a new generation of the Justice League. Among the remnants of the Rogues of Batman is the Jokers, the seemingly only remains of the Joker and his ideals. Now, to everyone's surprise, the Joker makes his appearance and starts wreaking havoc in Gotham once again after decades of being presumed dead. It is later revealed that the Joker is actually Tim Drake, who was treated so badly he became the new Joker. Number 2, White Knight. While this isn't technically labeled as a future story, the alternate universe comic Batman White Knight seems to be set at a point where Batman just kinda loses his patience with Joker, which I feel like would take a long time, so future, yeah. As Batman gets frustrated by the Joker and force feeds him a handful of random pills, it somehow cures Joker of his mental illnesses. Suddenly sane, Jack Napier, who was the Joker, goes on to sue Gotham City Police Department for his treatment when he was the Joker. He goes on to full-on fight the corruption of the GCPD and Batman's vigilantism. Maybe in some not so great ways, but he is a legitimately reformed Joker who is trying to do the right thing, and he even goes up against a Harley Quinn who becomes the Neo-Joker, obsessed with the goal of bringing the Joker back into existence, whatever that may take. And number 1, Dark Knight Returns. In the alternate future of The Dark Knight Returns from 1986, the Joker has been in a catatonic state ever since Batman's retirement, but once the news breaks of the Dark Knight's return, he miraculously regains consciousness. He manipulates his psychiatrist into declaring him cured, he hires a publicist to book him on a late-night talk show, and then on the show, he Joker toxins the whole crowd, which I believe was the inspiration for the talk show scene in the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. He then goes off on a spree of crime and de-lifings, drawing Batman out into the open. Batman pursues him into the Tunnel of Love at a carnival where he fractures the Joker's neck in a fit of rage, but cannot still bring himself to completely take down his enemy. The Joker does the deed for him though by twisting his fractured neck until it breaks completely, thus framing Batman as his killer. His body is soon found by the police before it bursts into flame, Batman having rigged the corpse to create a distraction. This is one of the best Batman stories, which automatically kinda calls for the best Joker. Number 10, Bishop. Bishop comes from a terrible 22nd century that became a pretty horrible dystopia after an event called the Summer's Rebellion. Bishop wants nothing more than to prevent this future from happening, and that is basically his entire personality. To prevent his future apocalyptic future, he travels back to the present day to find the X-Men and to become Professor Xavier's bodyguard. Eventually, Bishop seems to think that his future is created thanks to the birth of Hope Summers, which leads to him becoming a bit of a villain, but also leads to a conflict with someone we will talk about in just one sec. Now, his time jumping abilities are granted by a cybernetic arm that he possesses, but his actual mutant ability is to absorb and redirect any kinetic energy that is used against him or that is released in his general vicinity. He's easily a favorite X-Men for a lot of people, even if he lets his knowledge of a possible future guide his actions into some unfavorable places sometimes. Number 9. Cable. Cable, or Nathan Summers, is the offspring of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor, which should make you think that this guy isn't from the future at all. You see, Mr. Sinister had planned the birth of Nathan, hoping that he could use Nathan against the mutant known as Apocalypse, but that didn't work out. Instead, Apocalypse infected Nathan with a techno-organic virus. Because of this, and because his parents feared Apocalypse would hunt Nathan down, they sent their child to the future. It is true that adult Cable and Apocalypse do have a lot going on, as Cable does return fully grown to the modern day to stop Apocalypse, but also to face an evil version of himself. It's a lot, but that's time travel. Cable has not just one, but two modes of time travel. He can use a special future gadget to transport himself as well as his allies to a different point in time, but Cable can also use his telepathic abilities to send his astral form back in time as well, although he's only ever done that once. If you think about it, I'm technically talking to you from the past, since this is being filmed like 3 days before it goes up, or maybe it's months since I filmed it, maybe even years. You should like this video or comment and send a message to past me so that me, of your present, aka my future, can see it and appreciate it. Number 8. Spider-Man 2099. Instead of getting bitten by a radioactive super spider, Miguel O'Hara's DNA was biologically mixed with the spider's DNA to save his life after he was forcibly hooked on a not far off future substance by his employer. If that sounds convoluted, well, yeah, it is, but it also sounds right at home in a comic book. Although the process of gaining his powers differed from Peter Parker, Miguel O'Hara was still granted many of the same abilities at a pretty similar level as Spider-Man. One thing that differs largely from Spider-Man is Miguel's spider sense, because he doesn't have one. Instead, Miguel has advanced super senses like Daredevil. Miguel also has some abilities that are just wholly unique to him, like super speed or telepathic communication abilities, which are both really cool. He also has fangs and claws that are not so cool. They're more like freaky, but they're cool for combat, I guess. On top of all those powers though, Miguel is from the year 2099, which means that he naturally has a much more advanced set of technology at his disposal when he finally comes together with the Spider-Verse. Number 7. Booster Gold. Booster used to be a star college football player in the future who was caught betting on his own games and was expelled. So, luckily, this isn't a list of morally upstanding heroes. Booster got a job at a space and superhero museum, and in keeping with his interesting choice of morals, he found and stole Rip Hunter's time sphere, along with a bunch of other superhero gadgets. Using his future son's time sphere, he went back in time with the museum's robot named Skeets. Now, thanks to his knowledge of future crimes that would come to pass, he could easily go and stop them, and he did this becoming a hero, earning himself both profit and fame. Thankfully though, he did actually find some humility and eventually became a real hero, traveling throughout time, fixing the cracks in history and fighting evil time-traveling threats with no praise or applause except for, of course, us readers. Number 6. Iron Lad. Though this character's armor is quite similar to Tony Stark's and shares many of his Iron Man suit's features, hence the Iron Lad name, this is actually the younger version of the one known as Nathaniel Richards, aka King the Conqueror, or aka his other like 30 names. In the year 3016, Nathaniel Richards gets rescued by his future evil self before a lethal attack by bullies. Nathan is given new armor and trained by the villain to make himself even better, if that makes sense. Time travel. But this inadvertently made the young Nathaniel turn then against his future older self, and he uses the armor to travel to the modern day Earth 616. From there, Iron Lad's armor allows him to create temporal divergences, which let him manipulate time and travel through it. Now, going back in time, he eventually became the leader of the Young Avengers in order to balance the scales for things that he would do later in life. But because time is complex sometimes, he inevitably goes on to actually eventually still become Kang the Conqueror and do all the horrible things that Kang the Conqueror does. Even knowing your future doesn't stop you from being able to change it, apparently, I guess. Number 5, 2099. The Earth of Spider-Man 2099 is pretty awesome. Cyberpunk themes, President Doom, Miguel O'Hara as Spider-Man with the awesome suit. It shouldn't be any surprise that the Venom of 2099 is just as awesome and kind of scary. So long that it has evolved to have new abilities like acid blood and spit. This version of the symbiote bonded itself to Kron Stone, the son of Tyler Stone and the elder half-brother of Miguel O'Hara, bringing Venom and the Spider-Man even closer than their modern day equivalents. The symbiote first appears when it tries to kill Tyler in the hospital, and that is when Spider-Man intervenes. The fight goes on for a long time, like several issues long, with Venom even taking Spider-Man's former lovers. After Miguel learnt of Venom's weakness to sound, sonic sounds were emitted all over the city, stunning Venom, allowing Spider-Man to beat him, revealing Krom's identity. Later, the symbiote would merge with Roman the Submariner and flee to the ocean. Wow. Number 4, Aaliyah Bell. Kron Stone isn't the only person to bond to the Venom symbiote in the world of 2099. Aaliyah Bell had an injury on her left arm that she got in a terrible accident as a child. Now, as a teenager, the corporation Alchemax had Aaliyah undergo an experimental treatment that would fix her disfigurement. Only, what she didn't know is that Alchemax had actually bonded her with a piece of the Venom symbiote and had intended to make her a super soldier. Just like the Venom everyone loves, Aaliyah pleaded with the symbiote to become a hero with their abilities instead of being a monster and eating people. Venom agreed, but the pair start receiving dark visions of the symbiote god Null still being alive on Earth. Number 3, Venom as an acronym. Earth 138 is one of many realities that is shown to us in the Spider-Verse event. The President of the United States in this reality is Norman Osborn, who is also still the CEO of Oscorp. And what do you know? Oscorp in this reality also created Venom, as in V-E-N-O-M, like an acronym, which stands for Variable Engagement Neurosensitive Organic Mesh. So it's a bioweapon, one that President Osborn gives to his lackeys. Even he himself dons the dark creation, so we have an army of Venom-powered soldiers led by a Venom-powered President Norman Osborn. But who opposes this government Venom villain army? Well, this is the story where we get Spider-Punk and all his followers. Fighting for the beliefs, the Spider Army is a group of punks ready to stand their ground, and Spider-Man is their punk rock leader. Unfortunately for Osborn, their V-E-N-O-M is just as weak to sound as the Venom we all know and love, and we are shown this when Spider-Punk plays his electric guitar at full volume, completely blasting away the symbiotes as the two groups clash. Heck yeah. Number 2, Earth X. Earth 999, a world where basically every single person has powers. Things have gone apocalyptic, and the daughter of Peter Parker, May Parker, is in possession of the Venom symbiote. While her retired and cynical pops ain't too thrilled about it, she does actually have complete control over the symbiote thanks to her advanced and honed spider sense. She was eventually under the control of this kid going by the name of Red Skull, and thanks to her father and other Earth X classic heroes, she was saved. Venom and her father, Spider-Man, go on to join the superpowered police force and fight crime and supervillain threats together. She eventually, after the death of Death, goes on to be recruited by Kang the Conqueror as part of a multiversal team to fight the Apocalypse Twins. In addition to her proportional spider powers plus the enhanced spider sense, she gains all the usual symbiote powers plus a few extra, like what seems to be a rudimentary form of telepathy. And 'tis believed her symbiote could go on to mutate further to gain more powers, which is a good way for Marvel to say, we can do whatever we want with this. She's definitely one of the cooler incarnations of Venom. Number 1, Reign. 35 years have passed. Spider-Man is an old, retired man. Mary Jane Watson has passed away. New York is under the control of dictator Mayor Waters and his police force called Rain. But unbeknownst to most, it was actually Venom who had been pulling the strings, taking the position of aide to the mayor in the body of the cowardly Edward Sachs. This version of Venom is much more brooding, maniacal, and downright dastardly than his mainline counterpart, plotting and scheming for years for the eventual return of his rival Spider-Man. Venom is a bitter, old symbiote ever since Spider-Man retired, feeling abandoned by the hero, and he cannot wait to get his hands back on him. He has replicated himself thousands of times, put together the Sinister Six, and has trapped the citizens of New York and the city with his security system known as Web, all for the eventual return of his nemesis. All that, and he is still defeated at the end of the comic. Or is he?
Number 10. Hero for Hire / Power Man. That's right, while Black Panther was one of the first superheroes of color to appear in comics, Luke Cage's Power Man would actually beat him when it came to having his own comic series. This series was originally titled Hero for Hire, but the name would later be changed starting with issue 17 to Power Man. The first issue of Hero for Hire came out in June of 1971, and Black Panther wouldn't get his own series until 1977. I know, strange, right? The name for Luke Cage's series would change one more time starting with issue number 50, becoming Power Man and Iron Fist. That name would stick with the series from issue 86 till its end in issue number 125. Number 9. The Amazing Spider-Man. When many people think of Marvel Comics, this is often the hero they think of first. The first volume of Amazing Spider-Man would see its very first issue come out in March of 1963, and the first issue was very much an origin story, one that we'd become all too familiar with in the animated series and films to follow about everyone's favorite Spidey-themed hero, Peter Parker's Spider-Man. The series would be a long-standing one and would produce hundreds of issues, and although it has been relaunched, the story of Peter Parker continues to be one that comic book fans everywhere have become obsessed with, making Spider-Man one of the biggest superheroes, especially one of the biggest superheroes to come out of Marvel Comics. Number 8. Fantastic Four. The Human Torch was actually the first character to appear from the Fantastic Four in Marvel Comics number 1 in 1939. Sort of anyways. Marvel Comics was an anthology magazine comprised of various heroes' adventure shorts. I know, I said no anthologies, but I think this is a pretty cool fact. The Human Torch that actually first appeared in Marvel Comics was actually Jim Hammond. Hammond would later be reinvented in the Fantastic Four team as Johnny Storm, Sue's brother, so the character, while different, is even older than the Fantastic Four comics itself, which is still pretty old, although granted that Human Torch wasn't obviously the same as the Human Torch that we have now. The Fantastic Four series started in 1961 with issue 1, which like Spider-Man's start was also an origin story. Watch out for those cosmic rays, or maybe don't if you want superpowers. Number 7. The Flash. Starting us off with Barry Allen's Flash, this series had hundreds of issues as well, though not quite as many as the Amazing Spider-Man series. It all started in March of 1959 with issue 105. While that might seem like an odd number to start on, it was because the series was picked up by DC Comics after All American Publications cancelled its predecessor, a series known as Flash Comics, which featured predominantly the adventures of the Flash and Hawkman. DC Comics actually was kind of once All American Publications. DC was the phoenix that rose out of the ashes of a few different comic book publishers who came together to create DC, of which All American was one. And then later, that original Flash 2 from Flash Comics, Jay Garrick, would also become part of our continuity. Fun fact. Jay Garrick was one of the few Flashes that actually got to retire, post to die, or go back into the Speed Force, or any of that fun stuff. Number 6. Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman would get her own series in 1942, shortly after her appearance in All-Star Comics issue number 8. The first issue even introduced a female associate editor of the magazine, Alice Marble. Marble was known as an acclaimed tennis player. While her time on the DC staff editorial board was brief, she was also a self-proclaimed fan of Wonder Woman, who was responsible during her time with DC for the Wonder Woman of History feature in the comic, which retold the stories of real-life famous historical women. Wonder Woman's first story involved her saving Steve Trevor, and introduced us to the world of the Amazons. Apparently, Amazons liked riding kangaroos around originally. Did you know that? At least they look like kangaroos, I don't know. Giant kangaroos, we ride them in combat. I wonder when horses became a thing in these comics. I need to read more old Wonder Woman, because because it seems like a time. Number 5. Joe Chill. While we didn't know who he was at the time, Joe Chill would go on to become a huge supervillain in Batman's life. He would be known to Bruce Wayne as the man responsible for the death of Batman's parents. Well, responsible. More, he was known as the perpetrator. The circumstances surrounding the murder of Martha and Thomas Wayne in regards to it being part of a great plot or just a random mugging gone wrong would continue to be explored even after we found out Joe Chill's name. Either way, Joe Chill has been a huge villain in Batman's life anyways, because he took away Bruce Wayne's parents, which is kinda Batman's whole thing. Number 4. The Monk. The Monk first appeared in Detective Comics issue number 31, shortly after Batman's first appearance a few issues previously. He is often dressed in red robes, but his first appearance also featured him wearing a red cloth bag with eye holes on his head, marked with a skull and crossbones. So stylish. This was way back when Bruce Wayne also had a fiancée named Julie. The Monk ends up hypnotizing and kidnapping Julie. Batman, however, ends up chasing him down and facing a castle filled with booby traps in order to save his fiancée, who does not know apparently that her betrothed Bruce is actually the Bat. The issue ends with Batman swearing vengeance, soaring off to Hungary to find the Monk and his werewolves? I just love that part because I'm always like, wait, what do you mean you're going after his werewolves? He has werewolves? What? Did we find that out in that issue? I don't remember that being mentioned, but maybe I forgot. Number 3. Dr. Death. While his New 52 appearance is terrifying, Dr. Death actually first appeared in Detective Comics Volume 1, issue number 29, and looked just like your average mad scientist guy. He was one of the first supervillains that Batman ever encountered and is often known as a producer of biological weapons. You know, evil mad science stuff. Like most of Batman's supervillains, he isn't superpowered himself. His first appearance saw him being apprehended by Batman only to go down in a blaze of flames. Though at least, Batman tried to stop him from going down in a blaze of glory by tossing a fire extinguisher at him. So helpful, Batman, thanks for that. Needless to say, this wouldn't be the end of Dr. Death and we would definitely see him again. Now he's got that crazy bone serum that just makes bones grow everywhere. Used it himself, so he's got these crazy teeth. You should show them the picture. Number 2. Ultra Humanite. One of Superman's first foes before Lex Luthor even. I know, it's crazy. If you haven't noticed yet, comics both seemed to act as a celebration for science while also having an obsession for its less honorable uses via mad science, as we like to call it. That's its own category of science for you science nerds out there. Just kidding. I know mad science isn't an actual category, but it should be. Apparently old school views were that science is awesome but can also be super dangerous, which, I mean, true. Ultra Humanite's brand of mad science came in the form of body swapping. A brilliant mind trapped in a frail, old, crippled body, Geralt dreamed of setting himself free of his decrepit and failing body and conquering the world. Just normal dreams, you know how it is. Becoming Ultra Humanite, he is known for inhabiting various female bodies in the DC universe, including Tara's for a time. Kinda weird. And for inhabiting the body of an albino ape. Those are his things. He's into apes and swapping bodies with ladies. It's normal. It's fine. Number 1. Namor. The Submariner appeared even before Marvel was called Marvel. Well, now he is definitely more anti-hero and he never really has been a bad guy when it comes to him as a character. He's definitely also a bit of a jerk with a dark side, even when he's acting heroically, which, not going to lie, is part of the reason that I think we all love him so much. He's just so complex. He can be anything he wants or anything he needs to be. A villain, a hero, an anti-hero. However, when he was first introduced in the Fantastic Four comics in issue number 4 of volume 1 in the early 60s, way after his initial introduction in April of 1939, I know, it was as a villain to the Fantastic Four. After remembering his life as Prince of the Sea, Namor returns to his lost home of Atlantis only to find that it had been destroyed by the radioactive pollution of atomic tests. He seeks vengeance and the Fantastic Four must stop him as he aims to attack the land, destroying the city and causing harm to the land dwellers who he deems responsible for the destruction of his home. Which was very villainous at the time, but I feel like now a lot of us are cool with this because we're like, hey, you know, the ocean's real polluted, so like, yeah, fair enough. Also, they really did that. They really used to set off atomic bomb tests underwater. That's a thing that we did. Shame on us.
Number 10, Contest of Champions. Venom is the antithesis to Peter Parker when you think about it. I read somewhere, I can't remember where, that Venom is essentially what happens when someone acquires great power without possessing the great responsibility to keep it in check. And I like that. The two have an epic rivalry, but in Contest of Champions, yes, the Marvel fighting game, fans were introduced to a Venom from an alternate Earth that had managed to finally take down his first host and #1 enemy, Spider-Man. He went a little crazy off the victory over his longtime adversary and took the Spider-Man suit from Spider-Man's body and started to wear it around his neck as a tiny little cape. It's almost kinda cute, if not a little horrifying. He is a Venom that ultimately completed his #1 goal. He's living life as a fully realized Venom, just thriving. You go, Venom. You go. Number 9, Mech Venom. I'm not entirely sure that this is a future world, but the technology would suggest so. In an alternate reality Earth, 14512, a reality of giant robots and giant morbid monsters, the armored hero SP-4-4-DR, or Penny Parker, fights for peace and justice. Seeking to replicate the success of the SP-4-4-DR mech, the Venom, which is spelled VEN #M suit, is created. That's really confusing. Oh well. Combining a biomechanical sim engine with bleeding edge robotics. Get it? Sim engine? Like symbiote? Nice. Wordplay. Ultimately, during a crisis with the Morbius kaiju, the suit goes rogue, very rogue, and assimilates its pilot, young Addie Brock, plus Penny's Aunt May. The suit becomes a frightening, downright unstoppable threat to the world. Venom is a threat all on its own before it becomes a giant mech suit, so this is pretty bad. Number 8, more robots. Speaking of giant robotic mechs, in Megamorphs, Marvel's seriously obvious attempt to sell some toys, Iron Man recruited heroes such as Spider-Man, the Hulk, and Ghost Rider to aid him in battling the forces of evil using giant, eerily Transformer-like robots. Each of these giant robots, that also kind of remind me of Power Rangers, is unique to and powered by each hero. Unfortunately, villains got their hands on the tech as well that created the mechs, and a few have their own. Bet you can't guess who has one. Yes, obviously it's Venom. God, read the title? Dr. Doom recruits a team of villains to jump into their own giant robots to fight the do-gooders. And Venom pilots the Spider Smasher, a massive robot similar in style and color scheme to Venom with cool Venom-based abilities. It can also transform to be more spider-like as well. When it first shows up, it does battle with the Thing, almost losing before it makes its escape. Number 7, Old Man Hawkeye / Logan. Old Man Logan is an insanely graphic and fresh take on the Marvel Universe. It's set in a post-apocalyptic America where the villains of the Marvel Universe coordinated a simultaneous attack on the heroes orchestrated by none other than the Red Skull. There's a gang of Jewish Hulks, a giant skeleton of Loki crushed by the Baxter Building, old versions of superheroes and supervillains, and a Venom symbiote bonded with a T-Rex from the Savage Land. Even though this Venom only showed up for a little brief moment in the Old Man Logan storyline, Venom Rex instantly became a fan favorite character, which meant we got to see how this came to be in the follow-up, or I guess the prequel, Old Man Hawkeye. In this story, we see a Venom who bonds to the Madrox gang, who have kind of separated from James Madrox, sort of, but not really. Doesn't really matter. But after Venom bonded to the Madrox, they now use their power to duplicate themselves into an army of Venoms bound to track down Hawkeye, who had stuck the other Madrox members with plenty of arrows. An army of Venoms chasing you across the country would be pretty terrifying. After hunting down Clint to Kate Bishop's sanctuary, the two heroes led the Venom army into the wilds where it reduced its number, but then a random T-Rex from the Savage Land attacked the symbiote? I don't know. If you read Old Man Logan, you know that this is the exact same Tyrannosaurus that attacks Logan and Clint. And now, we've come full circle. Number 6. More of the same? And we return to Wolverine Old Man Logan, the same series as the previously mentioned T-Rex, except 15 years later and in the Edge of Venomverse 4, where things are now decidedly worse for the feral hero. The baby Hulk Logan took from the Hulk gang, Banner Jr., grew up a bit, and after Logan told him what happened to his family, the little Hulk beat the snot out of Logan. After Archangel, Banner Jr., and Ashley Barton capture Logan in the danger room of the X-Men mansion, they unveil that dang Venomized weaponized T-Rex yet again is alive. Logan is able to defeat Ashley, but when he attempts to take on the Venomsaurus Rex, that's what I'm gonna call it, he instead finds himself leaping down its throat. Banner Jr. is mid-celebration when suddenly the symbiote changes sides, de-bonds from the T-Rex, and takes over Logan. Logan escapes the beast as his Venom self and goes after his 2 captures. He defeats Archangel, and then just as he's about to finish off Banner Jr., he claims he can't, and that he kept the truth of his family from him because he loves him like a son, all while a portal randomly appears, bringing this Venom Wolverine face to face with the Venom Captain America of the Resistance in the Edge of Venomverse story arc. Number 5. Bart Allen. Bart Allen was born in the late 30th century, which is around the same time of the Legion of Superheroes. He is the grandson of Barry Allen, which meant that Bart was born with his grandfather's super speed instead of having to receive it in an accident. Unfortunately though, Bart also suffered from a super hyper-accelerated metabolism, which means he was aging at an insane rate. Like when he was 2 years old, he looked 12. To stop Bart from developing mental problems, Bart was placed in a virtual reality that kept pace with his aging. Now it turns out that doesn't really solve the problem at all. Instead, his grandmother, Iris Allen, decided to take Bart into the past to find Wally West, the third and arguably most powerful Flash. Now Wally pushed Bart to use his super speed at extreme new levels, which shocked Bart's metabolism back to regular speedster levels. Because of his time in the virtual reality though, Bart had no concept of danger, so he just kept acting before actually thinking. Batman, having the best sense of humor, decided to give Bart the nickname Impulse. Number 4. Rip Hunter. Rip Hunter is actually the future son of Booster Gold, who we talked about earlier, which raises a lot of questions. But he is also the DC Universe's leading authority in time travel. If you'll recall, Booster is from the future and used Rip's own technology to travel back in time in the first place. But this was before Rip was ever actually born in Booster's timeline, and now you understand why time travel is incredibly confusing. Other than being Booster's son from the future, Rip Hunter's origins and true identity are actually a total mystery. But this is on purpose, as keeping his origins and identity a mystery safeguards this time-traveling hero from time-traveling villains that would try to erase him from existence. And that's because Rip Hunter defends the time stream as a time master. Very cool. In his earliest appearances, his portrayal was more in line with the serial type of adventure he was involved in, so more adventure-based stories than a true superhero, until the 1980s when he became much more focused on the future implications of present events, which led to a worldwide apocalyptic event, and it was his obsessive goal to try and stop it. Now more recently though, his origins seem to suggest that he is from the 25th century, and now he's more of a protective overseer. But in all his iterations, he's cool as hell, and how could he not be with a name like Rip Hunter? Super cool. Number 5. Number 5 was one of the 43 children born at once, and one of the 7 children adopted by Sir Reginald Hargreaves in Dark Horse Comics' Umbrella Academy. 5 has the natural born ability to travel through time. While he isn't technically from the future, at the age of 10, 5 traveled 20 years into the future and found himself in an apocalyptic wasteland, forcing him to spend decades trying to travel back to his native 1960s. The failure of this slowly drove him completely insane. When he finally did travel back in time, he was captured and modified by the surgeons of the Temps Aeternalis, who mixed strands of DNA from a bunch of killers with 5's own DNA, which somehow made him the perfect killer, quote unquote. They also helped refine his powers though, teaching him how to perform micro jumps in time, making him incredibly fast. When he rebelled against the Temps and finally returned to the past, 5 days before the apocalypse, 5 regressed back from an old man to an unaging 10-year-old in transit. And that's why he remains the only childlike member of the Umbrella Academy when he is technically a fully grown man in a child's body. Freaky. Number 2. Wave Rider. The original Wave Rider would be Matthew Ryder from the year 2030. Now in this future world, the world has been ruled for 20 years by an armored despot known as Monarch, who has destroyed all of Earth's superheroes superheroes. Ryder was rescued from a collapsing building as a child by an unknown superhero, which inspired him to fight back as an adult. Knowing that Monarch had once been a hero before some unknown event turned him to evil, Ryder volunteers as a time travel test subject in hopes of traveling to the past and preventing Monarch from ever coming to exist in the first place. But where other similar experiments failed, his succeeded. Matthew entered the time stream and became Wave Rider, able to move back and forth through time as well as see people's most likely futures by touching them, which is super cool. And finally, in at number 1, it's Kiyoshi Morales. When a group of 5 Captain Americas from different realities are brought together in Captain America Corps number 1 from 2011, we get a look at Kiyoshi Morales, the great-grandnephew of Luke Cage and the 25th century's Commander A, which I'm sure the A stands for America. Kiyoshi is a much more physically imposing character, standing at what looks like almost 7 feet tall, and he was definitely the most physically imposing Captain America among the Captain Americas gathered. Instead of using a vibranium shield, Kiyoshi's suit can generate energy shields on each arm, which resemble the normal Captain America vibranium shield, kind of like Captain America 3099. Now his suit is much more advanced as well, as you'd expect from the 25th century Captain America stand-in. For example, it features a neuroweb, which allows him to tap into wireless systems and store information. He had all the enhancements we'd expect from a Captain America, and he is just a super cool character who I really hope we get to see more of in the future, but for now, he is definitely my favorite of the members of the Captain America Corps.
At number 10, we have the Maestro. This time-traveling alternate reality version of the Hulk is only number 10 on this list because I just couldn't wait to talk about him. You see, of all the countless versions of the Hulk, the Maestro is definitely the most nihilistic. After the Earth was devastated by nuclear war, the Hulk, whose personality is fully integrated with that of Bruce Banner by the way, has decided to turn against humanity and rule over what was left of society with an iron fist. You see, Banner recognized that even after fighting on behalf of ordinary people against superhuman threats, it was ordinary people who ultimately destroyed the world. So as you can tell, this future Hulk has a very bleak outlook on life. But Banner wasn't satisfied merely being the Maestro of Dystopia. So after tricking Spider-Man 2099 into fixing Dr. Doom's time machine, he was able to come back to the present and duke it out against his younger self. If you're enjoying the video so far, please support Top 10 Nerd by pressing like, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that notification bell. Because if this video doesn't turn out well, I might just become a time-traveling villain myself. You've been warned. At number 9, we have Armagon. Armagon is an anthropomorphic mutant shark on steroids from the future. You know, I never thought I'd hear myself say those words in that order, and it's thanks to sentences like this one that make me love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But before he teamed up with Shredder and Verminator X to face off against the Turtles, his battle in the Mighty Mutanimals sees him successfully defeating Murdude and Man Ray. And even though Man Ray's never met the shark, Armagon tells him that they fought against each other in his own past, which would be Man Ray's future. Yep, that's time travel for you. A feat that he's able to achieve thanks to an invention that he stole from a future version of Donatello, and in the end it took the combined might of all the Teenage Turtles, Master Splinter, Ninjara, plus the future versions of Raphael and Donatello to defeat the shark. At number 8, Lord Havoc. In the beginning, Lord Havoc was just a DC knockoff to Marvel's Doctor Doom, appearing alongside many obviously inspired characters. But as time went on, Havoc became a distinct enemy loved by the fans. The Prince of Kravia was cast out of his royal Angarian family on account of his hemophilia, which is a pretty harsh thing for his parents to do considering they gave it to him. So Alexei solved both problems at once by selling his soul in exchange for metal skin, allowing him to claim the throne by force. This was just the first of many impressive feats that would make his name notorious across many universes and continuities, including defeating the Retaliators and the Future Family, the DC counterparts to the Avengers and the Fantastic Four respectively. And he even wields the weapons of the heroes he defeated, from the Thunderer's axe to the Crusader's shield, and I'm sure you don't need me to tell you who those two are supposed to be. But Havoc is a bit of a change of heart after fighting Batman on Earth Prime. See, after Batman sacrifices himself to restore the planet of Angor along with all of the lives that were lost under Havoc's rule, Lord Havoc decides to take Batman's place and be sacrificed himself, refusing to allow anyone else to fulfill his responsibility to Angor. You hear that, guys? This supervillain based off Doctor Doom has a better moral code than the lot of you. Well, those of you who aren't subscribed, that is. At number 7 we have Strife. While we all know Cable as the time-traveling super soldier sent to the past to prevent his dystopian future, like most superheroes, Cable himself has a clone, who chooses to go by the name of Strife. He was created after a young Cable contracted a lethal virus, leading his mother to clone him out of fear that he wouldn't survive. Cable did survive, by the way, which would have made things a little awkward if not from an attack by Apocalypse. The original Cable was taken out of the room just before Apocalypse's arrival, leading him to believe that the clone left behind was the original. Apocalypse then abducted the clone, raising the infant himself with the intention of claiming the boy's body once his own had grown too old and feeble. But when the time came for Strife to be possessed by Apocalypse, it was revealed that he was a clone and therefore unworthy. This discovery made Strife go mad, determined to redeem himself by proving that Cable was in fact the clone, and when he failed to do that too, he turned on Cable, attempting to break the man by any means necessary. At number 6, Solaris. The artificial and sentient star was created in the far future as a secondary sun in the orbit of Uranus, which helps warm the now inhabited outer planets of the solar system. But that wasn't its original purpose. In fact, Solaris is detrimental to causing his own creation, as he was invented in order to counteract an organic technovirus which his future self created and sent backwards in time. The virus itself secretly containing Solaris' core programming, though before he could properly organize himself enough to take offensive action, he was defeated and banished to the outskirts of the galaxy thanks to a sacrifice made by Starman of the 853rd century. But this wouldn't stop Solaris from returning to plague the Earth, or more specifically Superman, as he would ruthlessly attack the Man of Steel and all of his descendants until he would eventually become known as the greatest enemy of the Superman dynasty.
At number 5 we have Nubia from Future State. First appearing a long time ago in 1973's Wonder Woman number 204, Nubia is introduced as the twin sister to Diana, who also happens to qualify for the title of Wonder Woman. But years later, during Future State Immortal Wonder Woman, Nubia returns in full Wonder Woman attire as though she's been doing it for years. A new announcement in Infinite Frontier number 0 shows readers what DC has in mind for Wonder Woman's future, seemingly introducing Nubia as one of the 2 new heroes to don the Wonder Woman mantle. What's more is Nubia also gets her own graphic novel back in February of 2021, which explores her upbringing set in a modern human world. At number 4 we have the Diana from Wonder Woman Evolution. This is the most recent future version of Wonder Woman on this list, currently being published in 2022. This futuristic storyline tells the story of Wonder Woman being taken away from Earth by a distant cosmic entity and forced to face off in challenges to prove the worthiness of Earth and its inhabitants, and the stakes to allow Earth to continue existing in the universe. There isn't much to be said about this version of the hero because she's just kind of getting started, but we can confirm that she is kicking ass and taking no prisoners as she continues to fight as Earth's delegate. And whatever this situation ends up building up to will be determined as the year goes on. So keep up with Wonder Woman Evolution. Get a copy now, there's only 8 issues out so far. At number 3 we have Wonder Woman from Wonder Woman Dead Earth. This version of the hero is faced with a dismal future after waking up from a centuries-long sleep. She wakes to the world in an apocalyptic state inhabited by mutated beings known as the Hydra. But considering how far into the future it is, Diana's JLA partners are all long gone and she's forced to face this brutal future wasteland on her own. The story is only told in 4 issues, but it takes on a grittier approach to the character of Wonder Woman, depicting her as much less dignified and put together than usual. But she manages to pull together her inner strength, and with the help of a deceased Batman's utility belt, she goes on into the wasteland to face off against massive beasts, partake in a gladiatorial arena, and eventually come into contact with a withered, robotic Superman, who actually helps in giving Diana a final boost of power to defeat a massive Hydra beast. It's one of the more unique depictions of the character on the list, and just in general, with some great artwork too. Go take a look if you haven't already. At number 2 we have Cassandra Sandsmark from the Titans of Tomorrow. Known more commonly as Wonder Girl, Cassandra does indeed have a run as Wonder Woman in the future. First seen in Teen Titans Volume 3, Issue 17, the Titans of Tomorrow come about after a present-day version of the Teen Titans from New Earth travel 10 years into the future and see a grim reality. The USA has been split into East and West, and their future selves have adopted a more relentless approach to justice. And during what's known as a Great Crisis, most of Earth's main heroes have died, leaving jobs open for these future Titans. Even though this is a more brutal version of Wonder Woman, it is interesting to see Cassandra take on the mantle, and it seems like there are no 2 ways about it. No matter what the modern Teen Titans try to do to change the timeline so that they don't turn out as more brutal versions of themselves, it doesn't work. Finally, at number 1 we have Yara Flor. Yara is from the tribe of the Amazons and actually comes from the heart of the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. She is first introduced as the new Wonder Woman back in 2020 as part of Future State, which shows us a new lineup of DC heroes moving forward into the future. This character has also been established as Wonder Girl in Infinite Frontier number 0, but with all the heroes that DC is planning on rebooting for this new wave, we still haven't gotten a full-fledged backstory for Yara quite yet. The best we have so far is a 2-part series called Future State Wonder Woman, but we're looking forward to it because Yara is a true departure for the character. DC seems to be bringing human culture into the origins of Wonder Woman for a new generation of readers, which I think will be cool to watch unfold. Also, she's just a cool new hero that many people online have been showing quite a lot of excitement about, including myself. There's not a ton to be said about Yara as Wonder Woman, but you can catch up with her adventures in the 2-part series released in January 2021.
Number 10. Black Panther. The leader of Wakanda made his first comic book debut appearance in Fantastic Four issue 52 in 1966. He is often credited with being the first black superhero to appear in comics. The only sad thing is that it took us that long to get one. The 60s! Such a long time in comics, so long. He was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The first story involving him in the pages of Fantastic Four Volume 1 are pretty hilarious and great. If you haven't read them, you kind of should. They're interesting. Black Panther invites the Fantastic Four to Wakanda. Naive as they are, they accept. But what they don't know is that Black Panther longs to fight them. Of course, while the comic originally seems to be spinning Black Panther as a villain, it is later revealed that he only wanted to test them, and the fighting was merely to prove their merit as he needs their help. In the next issue, issue 53, we learn more about his backstory and why he has sought out the Fantastic Four. We are also introduced even more to the land of Wakanda with its unique combination of new age tech and tradition, old and new. So there you have it. Number 9. Green Lantern. Before Hal Jordan or Guy Gardner, there was Alan Scott. He was the first Green Lantern and was created by Martin Odell, making his comic book debut in All American Comics issue 16. When this first Green Lantern made his appearance, he probably seemed to be pretty cool, I'm sure. This was way back when the Green Lantern was still an actual lantern, by the way. It's just this lantern he was carrying around. But in retrospect, Alan Scott is known as being one of the silliest Green Lanterns because he has one of the strangest weaknesses in comic book history. Wood. While there definitely wouldn't be openly gay superheroes for some time yet since he was introduced in 1940, I like to think the fact that he is helpless against wood might pose a double or symbolic meaning. I'll just let you ponder what you will about that. But that's just me. Either way, the weakness is a hilarious one to see in comics, just villains beating him with wooden clubs and baseball bats, and it would later be fully explained and made semi-logical later on, but still, it's ridiculous. And I love it. Number 8. Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger originally started appearing in a comic strip and would later receive his own comic book series in 1948, which went for over 100 issues. Before he was even in comics though, Lone Ranger was a superhero recognized for his radio show, which debuted in the early 1930s. The first few comics consist of compilations of his comic strips, but new stories began with Lone Ranger starting with issue 38, which saw Paul S. Newman writing and Tom Gill on art. The Lone Ranger was known as a mysterious masked Texan Ranger who would fight bandits and outlaws in the Wild West of America, with his loyal pal Tonto and his trusty steed Silver. Hi-ho Silver away! Number 7. Tonto. You didn't think I was going to talk about Lone Ranger and just leave Tonto out of this list, did you? Tonto was originally shown as Lone Ranger's native partner and was part of the Comanche tribe originally. Some may think of him as just a sidekick, but as time progressed his character tended to be more presented as an equal and partner to the Lone Ranger rather than just a sidekick. He got his own comic book spin-off series in the 50s titled The Lone Ranger's Companion Tonto, and was often depicted as being witty and sarcastic, even going on to mock other less favorable portrayals of himself in pop culture that made him seem more savage. I like when heroic characters are self-aware and sassy like that. I feel it. Deadpool, She-Hulk, Tonto. Keep being sassy, keep being witty. Number 6. Superman. Superman is that hero that you usually think of when someone asks who the oldest superhero is during a trivia night. And honestly, I'm sure it's an acceptable answer by most trivia standards. But not here. Not here. Here we go further. Superman is widely thought of as being one of the oldest, the original American comic book superhero. But seeing as how he is number 6 on this list, I think us mega nerds would likely know otherwise. Still, he came out in 1938 and first debuted in Action Comics number 1. And honestly, if you read his original appearance, it's easy to see what all the hullabaloo Blue is about. It's basically a piece created to show off and introduce just how unstoppable Superman is. In fact, Superman would continue to be presented as near invincible until the 80s, acquiring more and more powers with each appearance. And then we had to fix that, we had to tweak that, because it's too much power. Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster.
Number 5. Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul was born around 700 years ago, and thanks to the Lazarus Pits, he has been able to keep his body in working order. But he discovered the pits when he was an older gentleman and keeps the look of someone with a significant amount of years to him. After he came in contact with the pits, he eventually became a master martial artist and a master fencer, gaining a massive amount of wealth, and he started creating organizations to rid the world of crime, with his first being called the Demon, which the later League of Assassins is a branch of. Rage's purpose within the League of Assassins is to eliminate all evil in the world by destroying all of humanity and just starting all over. Obviously, that mentality means he routinely has run-ins with the superhero community, especially Batman, who he helped train. Rage has had many plans over the years that tried to destroy the world, and he has also beaten the entire JLA when he discovered Batman's notes. Now, with his years of experience and his vast amount of accumulated resources, this older fellow is a massive threat to both the heroes and the world. Number 4. The Joker. During the absolutely fantastic 3 Jokers storyline, we learn there have actually been 3 Jokers plaguing Gotham over the years, and among the 3 of them is the Golden Age Joker, and he is clearly much older than the other 2. Now, to be completely transparent here, whether this story is canon or not is an area of debate, so it's up to you if this one counts. But the Golden Age Joker, known as the Criminal, is the only one of the 3 Jokers to be a predominantly serious crime lord, and he even says that laughing and smiling is physically painful for him. Another thing that makes this entry a little arguable is that of these 3 Jokers, we don't know which one, if any of them, is the Joker. Even if only one remains in the end, the best part of this story is the uncertainty about which one is the one who started it all. Now, seeing as the Criminal is the oldest, classic version, he seems to be the one who started it all, creating more Jokers to mess with Batman. But the other 2 Jokers have been featured in incredibly important Batman stories as well. The comic really explores all of it, and if you haven't yet, make sure you check out Batman 3 Jokers as soon as possible. Number 3. Maestro. The Incredible Hulk has certainly been through the ringer in his decorated career, but few versions of the character are the living embodiment of that fact, like the Maestro. An alternate version of Bruce Banner from an apocalyptic future, this version of the character is far more intense and complex, but also much older. The best way to explain Maestro is to say that he is basically a smarter, older, villainous version of Dr. Bruce Banner, with all the powers and abilities of the original, but with a touch of nuclear radiation. He has much more of a cosmic and spiritual side to him than the normal Hulk does, but he is also twice as strong as Hulk is, and he retains all the intelligence of Bruce Banner, but with years and years more experience. Despite all that extra strength, brain power, and experience, he still gets outmaneuvered by the Hulk, who sends Maestro back in time to the site of the gamma bomb that created them. But even then, the Maestro's spirit remains on the bones left behind after the explosion went off and he came back to life. Number 2. Agatha Harkness. Like a few of these villains, when we first met Agatha Harkness in Fantastic Four number 94 from October of 1969, she was already elderly. She started out as the nanny for the newly born Franklin Richards, and using her magical powers, she even saved the Fantastic Four from the Frightful Four and a handful of other villains, and also helped Franklin when his powers first started to emerge. But she went on to have an interesting relationship with the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, but also her mother, Natalia Maximoff. That's because this sweet nanny Agatha is actually an incredibly ancient sorcerer who was around to remember the sinking of Atlantis nearly 18,000 years ago. And she was probably the most powerful of the original witches during the Salem witch trials, an event that she actually supported as she thought it would cull the weak magic users who held them back. Agatha, like a lot of older villains, is pretty damn complex. She has helped out heroes on multiple occasions, but she's also done some pretty sinister stuff. But there's no doubt that she is much stronger than both heroes and villains first assume. Number 1. Baron von Strucker. Baron Wolfgang von Strucker was born in the 19th century, so he ain't a young fella by any means. He fought with the Axis powers during World War II alongside and under the Red Skull. He was a top villain at the time, not just for Captain America, but more prominently as an adversary for Nick Fury and the Howling Commander, commandos. And that carried through after the war ended, as Strucker was instrumental in the rise of Hydra and then became the Supreme Hydra. He was even responsible for the corruption of S.H.I.E.L.D., using Hydra to completely take over large parts of S.H.I.E.L.D. itself. When Captain America returned, and then the Red Skull did as well, Strucker began to lose his leadership role within Hydra, and so he faked his own passing, choosing to instead manipulate events from the shadows. Eventually though, Strucker got the Death Spore virus, which is why he is on this list. He's old, and many people don't know he has this particular enhancement. While he is an excellent strategist, a highly intelligent, exceptional hand-to-hand combatant, swordsman and marksman who uses Hydra tech to live longer and be in top physical condition, the Death Spore virus bonded Strucker's DNA with the Death Spore itself, enabling him to be revived after passing away. He hasn't aged since getting the virus, he heals at an incredible rate, is invulnerable to minor injuries, resistant to toxins and disease, and he can even release the Death Spore virus from his body at will, taking his victims' lives nearly instantly if he chooses to.